twice in the past 24 hours and you change one thing. Trying to see how many trees.
It's almost a whole ream of paper.
Yeah.
Right.
Hi, this is Brainerd Watson. Sorry, I'm late getting in here. I'm in Georgia and having a few computer issues, so bear with me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You've joined the same meeting that I joined, in which everyone was laughing and having a good time.
I know. I wondered if they were talking about us.
Now that we're here, they've gotten quiet and there's no laughter.
That means they were talking about us, Tom.
Not yet.
Yeah.
That would be a funny set of topics.
Yeah, really.
Mayor, Councilman,
Okay, so
will not be here for the work session, sir.
where are we with an agenda? It looks like it's 6 o'clock. We have an agenda, but a quorum. How many people do we have here?
We have 6, Mayor.
We have everybody but the vice mayor?
The Vice Mayor is
I'm
on the
here.
phone.
Oh,
We have
he's here.
everybody
Okay.
but Ann Donahue.
All right. So we'll call this meeting to order. It does not have a provision for a pledge of allegiance, so we'll go directly into the fiscal year 22 capital improvement plan. Looks like we have a presentation by Mr. Matthews. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. Mr. Matthew Williams.
No problem, sir. 1 second while we pull the presentation up. Can everyone see the presentation?
I can see it.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. For tonight, we have the capital improvement project prioritization. You may remember in the last few council meetings, we had requests for this to see priorities from staff as far as CIP projects, what we could afford to do, what we couldn't afford to do, and what we could realistically hope to get done this year. That information, of course, is tonight's presentation. In the presentation, me and Paige will be bouncing back and forth between revenue streams. We are going to throw a lot of information at you, a lot of numbers. We certainly welcome any questions you may have as we go along. Next slide, please, Paige. We're going to go through it by revenue stream with projects per revenue stream to try to simplify it. The first one we'll go through, of course, is HERF. HERF is Highway User Road Funds. User Revenue Funds. The next one are the ARP funds. That's COVID relief funds. Then Litchfield Square bond. You know, of course, what the bond is. That's for the Litchfield Square projects only. And then the general fund surplus. And part of the general fund surplus is construction sales tax. Again, as we see these numbers, the years presented are city fiscal years, not calendar years. Next page, please. This sheet is important to show you total revenues and expenditures on CIPs for fiscal year 22. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see revenues. The right-hand side is expenditures. At the beginning of this fiscal year, we started off with $15.9 million general fund balance. For this current year, we have a projected surplus of $2.5 million. We have a 1.2 projected construction sales tax revenues. That makes a total of $19.6 million. Again, that's general fund balance and construction sales tax. For HERF this year, we're $1.1 million. The American Rescue Funds or ARP funds, 1.1. Litchfield Square bond proceeds, of course, is $15 million. That means the total projected resources for this year are $36.8 million. Again, that's the revenue side. That's not operations. Again, this is CIPs. Again, $36.8 million. On the expenditure side, again, we start with 36.8, and then we start subtracting funds. Less the general fund recommended projects, that's $3.3 million. Less the construction sales tax projects, that's $615,000. Less the HERF projects is $1.1 million. Less the ARP projects is $700,000. Less Litchfield Square projects is $15 million. That's in FY 22 and 23. Less the city contribution to Litchfield Square, $3.4 million. One thing I would point out there is those are two different things. The $15 million is, of course, the bond money we received, but also the city's putting its own money toward this project as well. So that $3.4 million is separate from the 15, just to point that out. And then you have the required city reserve and stabilization fund. Those two numbers together are a total of $4.4 million, minus the bond payment for this year, which will be $420,000. At the end of the day, that leaves us with $7.8 million remaining available resources. And again, that's after all the expenditures between HERF, construction sales tax, ARP funds, and general fund surplus projects. That's a good place to be. And when you see these numbers, that's really a testament to this council and the way this city's been ran for a long time, that you can be in that position. We're going to go through these project by project and by fund as we go along. But any questions on this page so far? At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Paige for the HERF section.
Thank you, Matthew. And Mayor and Council, like Matthew mentioned, we're going to go walk you through each revenue source. So I'm going to start with the Highway User Revenue Fund. It's made up of gasoline tax and other transportation-related fees. It's deposited into the state's Highway User Revenue Fund, and then they distribute it to cities and towns and other local jurisdictions. But cities and towns receive 27.5% of that. So the left side just shows the revenues, the HERF revenues we've received since 2017. And the right side shows the expenses that we've spent from the HERF fund. That doesn't mean the city did spend more on road projects, but this is just all the city has spent from the HERF fund. So for this fiscal year, the HERF fund has $1.1 million available to spend in fiscal year 22. That's made up of the $723,000 that the fund started with on July 1st, plus our anticipated revenues this year of $428,000. I will point out we did get yesterday updated revenue numbers from the league because they received the final census numbers. So positive news for us. They're projecting our HERF fund will actually, our revenue will go up almost $33,000. So we'll be getting a little bit more than we had budgeted for. This next slide, I just wanted to put it in graph form. It doesn't provide any different information than you just saw. I just wanted you to see it, a visual of the revenues that we've received, which is this light green line here, and then what we've spent out of the fund, this bottom line here. So that's how we ended up with such a big balance in this fund. But the city has invested between $300,000 and $600,000 each year in road maintenance since 2012. This just shows what was spent from the HERF fund. And this is a look at the fund balance of the HERF fund. You can see how it's grown since 2017. It started with just under 600,000, and we've grown to just over $1 million. So we are recommending 3 projects to be paid for out of the HERF fund: $600,000 for city street maintenance, $450,000 for the Litchfield Road Mill and Overlay, and $40,000 for Village Parkway sinkhole repair, which that's actually already been completed. So 1 second. And those 3 projects total $1.1 million. So if council does decide to move forward with all the projects we're recommending, that will leave the HERF fund with an estimated ending balance of just under $51,000, plus that $32,000 that we found out yesterday we'll probably be getting. That is the end of the HERF information. Are there any questions?
Vice Mayor, question.
Go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Paige, in past years, people that sat in your chair before you were paying HERF eligible funds out of the general fund account. And there were supposed to be some transfers or corrections or something like that. Has that all been satisfied now so that none of these funds are proper to be moved into the unrestricted general fund?
I'm not exactly sure what had happened in the past. I have noticed that there wasn't a lot of activity in the HERF fund. There were a lot of projects that could have been paid for from the HERF fund. I know now moving forward, we're going to ensure that we use the HERF fund for road projects before we use the general fund. So I can reassure you that we will use HERF funds before general funds for eligible projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Mayor, you're correct in terms of asking about this. That literally the use of HERF funds by the city and the way that the city has dealt with the HERF funds for more than a decade has been to let them build up until the point where they became obvious that there was a buildup, and then all of a sudden people would realize that they haven't been spending the funds. It was promised to council multiple times by prior staff that they would make the appropriate movements of funds at the end of the year to get the accounts to be correct and to utilize the HERF funds instead of having all of the money come out of the general fund. Unfortunately, that was not always, it didn't always happen. In fact, it very rarely happened. So that's why we have this huge $1 million account balance in the HERF money. I think staff understands now going forward, we're not going to do that. So we're going to make the proper use of the funds throughout the year so that we don't have to go back at the end of the year and reclassify these things, because it's that reclassification thing that is difficult because everybody gets busy closing out the year. Then we get busy with the audit, and by the time you know it, we're in the middle of the next year and we didn't make any of the adjustments we should have made for the prior year. So now we haven't used these HERF funds, and now they're sitting in a restricted account when they could be in the general fund account where we could use it for a variety of things. So I'm hopeful that going forward, we're going to do a better job as a council looking at our CIP expenditures and then following up with staff to make sure that as we spend money that should be allocated to HERF, that it is being allocated to HERF and the money is being used throughout the year, and we're not depending upon end of the year adjustments to clear all this stuff up.
Well, it seems like there wasn't really any harm. We've got plenty of demand for those funds. We just need to make sure that we are using them in the right way when time comes.
Right. There's been no harm whatsoever done to it to anything. But it's because the city has been generally managed very conservatively, and so we've had an excess of funds in the general fund, so that we didn't need to worry about exactly where these monies were and how they were classified. But it's just not good practice, I don't think, not to use the money the way it's intended and to allow these large fund balances to build up. It's better to use them throughout the year for their purpose, which is to maintain our roads. So. But there has been there isn't any damage that was done whatsoever at all.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll hand it back to Matthew.
Thank you, Paige. Now we're going to discuss ARP funds. Again, ARP funds are code funds. The actual title ARP is for American Rescue Plan funds, federal funds. For this year, we're going to receive $1,074,000. For next year, we'll also receive $1,074,000. As you'll see below, we were budgeted for $806,000. We got more money than we thought we would, which is great. A couple things to know here on ARP funds. They have to be used by 2025, so we have several years to use these monies. But also, if we spend above $750,000 of these monies annually, that triggers an automatic audit of these funds. So you will see we're planning on spending $700,000 of these funds because, again, we have several years to break out the expenditures of these monies. Again, we get them over $1 million for this year. For expenditures upcoming projects, $700,000 for this year, probably $700,000 for next year, so on and so forth. Next slide, please. The ARP projects. First of all, is $250,000 toward the Vista Verde drainage project. I think we're all familiar with this project and what it is. This is the construction of 100-year flood control measures for the Vista Verde neighborhood. This project's underway. It's been coming in the works for a long time. The next one is 130 grand toward the downtown storm drain construction of stormwater projects in the downtown area. This would include flood control for the underpass as well. The next one is 320,000 toward the downtown storm drain engineering. That one is underway as well. One thing you will see on there are some additional monies of one of these of $370,000 that will be charged to the general fund. And the reason why we're doing that, of course, we split that cost up. So we're only spending 700,000 of ARP funds. So again, that's a total of 700 grand from these funds for these three projects this year. Any question on any of these items? Okay, next slide, please. The ARP funds, so again, the total balance we'll receive over the next 2 years will be $2.2 million. The remaining half we'll receive next year again. For this year, we're spending $700,000. Between the next 2 years, that'll leave us with a balance of 1.75. Again, I would recommend that we spend roughly $700,000 a year on various projects. Any other questions on ARP funds before we move on to the next one? Thank you. Paige, we're back to you.
Thank you, Matthew. The Litchfield Square bond, at our last meeting, council approved $15 million in bonds for this project. We did actually receive the funds last week. So we are anticipating we'll spend $11.7 million this fiscal year and $14.3 million next fiscal year. Obviously, that totals a lot more than $15 million. Total project cost is about $26 million, but the city is committed to investing $5 to $6 million from cash on hand. So after the bond proceeds and the city's cash contribution have been exhausted, some project features might be delayed until other funds are available, such as land sales. The GMP1 is $3.5 million, the demolition and the mass grading. The GMP2 is
Sorry.
Sorry, yes?
Tom, Councilmember Tom. I just have a quick question. In that the first slide that Matthew went over that short listed all of the different projects, I don't think we had that did we have that 5 or 6 million as part of our response, as part of our expectation to put towards city center? I thought we had a smaller number there.
Yes, sir. So that's a little bit complicated. So if you'll go back to that one, I'll say, see general fund, or let me see here, 1 second. See here,
Right here,
less city contribution to Litchfield Square.
Yep, that's
So that's part
3.4.
of it right there is $3.4 million.
Right.
But there's also 1.6 million that's going toward Litchfield Square. That 1.6 is included in the 3.3. And the reason we divide that up, sir, the 1.6 is for utilities, it's for water and sewer. And legally, we cannot pay for water and sewer utilities out of bond money because those utilities are going to go to Liberty. And because of that, we have to pay for those projects out of general fund monies, not bond money, if that makes sense. So of course, the 3.4 plus the 1.6 equals $5 million.
Okay, so basically included in this particular slide is a grand total of 20 million towards Litchfield Square, 15 plus 5.
Between the bond money and city money. Yes, sir. That's right.
Okay.
And then the other, of course, it's a balance of 26 million. So the remaining $5 million, that's park features like the clock tower, the bandstand, that kind of thing. And we may very well end up funding some of that through the city. Maybe we do some of it through sponsorship, such as the rotary clock tower, that kind of thing. But we're not there just yet, but that is something to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And our last GMP3 is estimated at 5.5 million, which will be Litchfield Road, the roundabout, and Village Parkway. So this is what makes up the fiscal year 22 total of 11.7 million. Are there any other questions on the Litchfield Square bond money? Okay. Matthew, back
Yep.
to you.
Thank you, Paige. Now we're going to go over the general fund balance detail before we get into general fund projects. So again, beginning of the year, we started out with $15.8 million. Then we subtract the minimum reserve of 15%, that's 1.3. Then we subtract the stabilization reserve of 35%, that's 3.1. That leaves us, after reserves taken out, $11.4 million. Then we take off the $3.4 million, our contribution to City Center that Councilman Reports was just asking about. That takes us down to $8 million. Then you take off this year's bond payment of $420,000. And then you add in the construction sales tax revenues for this year. Again, that's a projected number, $1.2 million. Then you subtract the construction sales tax projects we discussed with $615,000. Then you subtract the general fund CIP projects, which I'm about to get into, for a total of $3.3 million. And then you have this year's projected surplus of $2.5 million. At the end of the day, in the general fund balance detail, that brings you down to $7.4 million. And again, that 7.4 does not include ARP monies. It doesn't include HERF monies. That's general fund balance monies. So again, after all your reserves, after your bond payment, after your city contribution toward city center, you're at 7.4. That's a lot of numbers. Again, we're going to get into the general fund projects in the next few slides, but any questions on the numbers here so far? Okay.
One question before you go off the slide.
Yes, sir.
Within that 7.4 million, is that how much of the bond has been expended to result in this 15.8 million beginning fund balance? Is it 11.4 million out of the 15, or is it all 15?
Paige?
Are you talking about the $15 million bond?
Correct. I just want to make sure that the expenditure of that bond is going to happen. I think it happens over 2 fiscal years, doesn't it?
22 and 23.
Right. So is there any of the unexpended bond money in this $7 million balance?
No, this doesn't include any of the bond money at all. It only includes the payment for the bond, but it doesn't include any of the bond proceeds.
Okay, so bond proceeds are sitting off in another account, and they are there for Litchfield Square capital items next fiscal year.
Correct. This is just general fund only.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor, question.
Yes, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Paige, I hadn't thought this entirely through before, but am I understanding that of our $15 million bond money that we were spending, maybe there's $1 million in untaxable services and $14 million in sales taxable events going on? That then is going about roughly 7% of that, 65% of our 11% construction sales tax rate. About 7% of that 15 million is going to come back to us to go into the general fund in the form of sales tax. That's like $1 million.
Correct. And we actually have started to receive some of that construction sales tax money already.
Which is basically the bond money that we're paying out. Okay.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions on general fund balance detail? Okay. Now we're going to move forward into construction sales tax. Paige will do construction sales tax with you, and then I'll go over general fund projects with you. Please, Paige.
Thanks, Matthew. Construction sales tax, prior to 2020, the city didn't break it out, so that's why we didn't go as far back with construction sales tax revenues as we did the other funds. But on the left side just shows what we've received the last 2 years and what's projected for 22, which is 1.2 million. It is a very conservative number. And I will adjust this as, projects are moving along and update you throughout the year. But right now I am being really conservative with this projection at 1.2. Construction or the expenditures and upcoming projects, we are proposing $615,000 for fiscal year 22, which is $300,000 for Camelback Park design, which is a medium priority, $140,000 for the Bullard Wash connections, which is a low priority, $175,000 for Stacks Park design and engineering, which we consider a high priority. So that's the total of $615,000. We are recommending that we do leave some held in reserves for the possible hilltop reimbursement. So if we do move forward with all of those and the projection of 1.2 million is accurate, however, that is a very conservative number, that would leave us with $585,000 that can be held for future CIP projects or development agreements. Are there any questions on the construction sales tax?
Yes, there are. I have a question. This is Ron. The monies that we refunded from being misapplied earlier in the year, is that somewhere in this number in the revenue, or is that number not reflective? Is the revenue number not reflective of the refunds we had to issue?
I went ahead and booked payable at the end of the year, so that 15.8 million balance that we started with, because we're talking about construction sales tax separate from the general fund, but it is general fund money. So that beginning $15.8 million, I have already deducted the refund. So even though we are still holding on to the money, the refund is essentially on our books. So that's already been accounted for. It is just taking a very long time for them to take the money back, but this doesn't impact these numbers. But that is one reason why I'm being so conservative with the revenue projections.
Understand, but the revenue projection, did we have enough revenue to be in excess of, so the number that we're reflecting here as revenue for the fiscal year, does that number reflect a refund or an actual net number, or is that just the gross revenues from this year?
That'll just be gross revenues for this year. If I go back up to this slide here, so see this beginning balance here, this 15.8 million. I've already subtracted out the refund from this number. So had that not happened, this number would be $800,000 higher. And then we've added in the 1.2 million in projected sales tax revenue. So it's been accounted for up in this top number. We basically started the year as if we had already refunded the money.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions on construction sales tax before we move into general fund surplus? Okay, thank you. Next slide, please, Paige. General fund surplus, as you see, the numbers have went up greatly over the years from 597 in 2017 to 2.5 this year. For upcoming projects, in 2017, we spent $4.2 million out of surplus. In 2019, we spent 646. And you'll see in a few slides what 2017, what so much money was spent on that year. For 21, we spent 1.7. Again, for this year, we're recommending $3.3 million in projects for this year. One thing I would tell you about general fund projects is, in the past, we put them off. The problem with putting off general fund projects is they get more expensive, especially in these days with construction sales prices being what they are. And a good example of that is roads. Roads, of course, are HERF projects, But the longer you let a road go, the more expensive it gets to repair. It just does. Same thing with a lot of these projects as well. Next slide, please. As you'll see, the general fund balances went up 480% since 2012. Obviously a huge increase from just over 2 million in 2012 to down to about 1.5 in 2016 to almost $16 million where we are today. Again, it's a great thing to be able to say this for the city. So many cities would love to be in this position. Next slide, please. As far as the capital investment, you'll see the years where they went up and down. You'll see some notes below on 2015. We bought Scout Park almost $1 million. Aleppo improvements 356. So right there, you had $1.3 million in 2015. 2016, we were buying city center land for 2.9, and we built the retaining wall around the lake. That's $500,000. Those two alone, $3.4 million. In 2017, we bought the corner for city center 2.1, the wall improvements 850, the retaining wall 437, and the pathway for 390. So we wanted to show you in past years if there's a big spike, why the spikes have been that way. And this explains that. And then, of course, you see the decrease back. And, of course, now we're going back up on spending. Next slide, please. Now we'll get into the actual projects. The first one is the 1.6 million. This is the one I was telling Councilman Restosi about. This is for the water and sewer lines. Again, we can't legally pay for this out of bond monies because these utilities will be transferred to Liberty. So because of that, we have to pay for it out of general fund surplus monies. Again, that's $1.6 million. As you know, that project is well underway. The next one is the police patrol vehicles for $182,000. Those have been ordered. We expect those to get here around Christmas time. 200 grand left to pay on the Litchfield Road wall that's been done. This is the last portion of that payment. The rec AC was 43 grand. That's already been done. The next one is 370 toward the downtown storm drain construction. You'll remember that's the balance left over after ARP funds, $370,000. The next one is 50 grand toward IT cost. That's one-time capital cost for the city IT conversion. That's underway. We've been making great strides in bringing the city IT into the 21st century. So, any questions on any of these projects so far? Next slide, please. $100,000 for public works equipment. This is just something to keep up with every year. Every year we should plan on replacing equipment as it wears out. Otherwise, we kick the can and several years down the road, we're paying $500,000 versus $100,000 every year. High priority. $87,000 for the Stags Park Playground. You actually see this item on your agenda for approval tonight. 75 grand for the South Luna curb and gutter. We've been promising that one for years. Woody can talk to you more about that project if you have specific questions as far as why we're doing that now. 60 grand toward the Dysart Wall design and engineering. 25 grand toward the pathway design and engineering. $12,000 toward the Turtle Park restroom updates. That's for water damage, roof repairs, paint, basic upkeep, 12 grand. $15,000 for the Tierra Verde Lake dock updates. That's the stucco, planter repairs, paint the dock, etc. Again, $15,000. Downtown lighting is 100 grand. That's to raise the outlets for water damage, to replace light fixtures, RBG lighting, and bad electrical. Any questions on any of these projects? Next slide, please. $10,000 for Loma Hilltop. In my opinion, this one honestly is probably a placeholder. For those of you that are involved in this, we're currently on our third or fourth draft of a potential agreement with Sun Health to restore the Hilltop. This money's there if we need it. Again, I don't know that we'll get to use it this year, but we wanted it on there just in case we needed it. 20 grand toward Jackie Robinson field drainage. And the last one, of course, is contingency, a 10% contingency of $400,000. That's a project total of $3.3 million of general fund surplus projects for this year. Any questions on any of these projects? As you think about these projects, of course, these projects will all come back to council for approval, project by project. We just want to bring a list to you guys so council can see, here's the projects that staff recommends, so you can be thinking these over. And hopefully we can get some staff direction to move forward with these projects as presented. And again, we'll bring them to you for final approval as ready. But again, if all these projects are approved throughout the year, we're going to get a lot done in fiscal year 2022 between HERF, ARP, construction sales tax, and of course, general fund monies. So you'll see a lot of positive improvements in the city. And staff has talked about that. Can we realistically get all this done? And we think we can. So any questions?
Question, Vice Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Matthew, you saw it in my notes, that $10,000 for Loma.
Yes, sir.
We have kind of orally committed, possibly, maybe sort of, to do the deceleration lanes and the left turn lanes for the main entrance into that place. $10,000 wouldn't come close to doing that. Is that accounted for someplace else in the budget?
Not for this one. That would have to be in later budget years. And you're 100% right, sir. This wouldn't begin to touch that expense.
And I
Okay,
think,
you've got enough
Mr. Vice Mayor, I think the way that we have done that is within the development agreement with Sun Health, when they do the improvements on Litchfield Road that they're required to do, then they're going to also do the improvements that are required for the Historical Society. And we are going to repay their cost of that through rebates of construction sales tax.
Correct. Okay, and then I just contemplate that somehow, somewhere in this process, and I've not been in the trenches with you negotiating with the Historical Society or with Sun Health, but there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done infrastructure-wise to get the hill so that citizens can use it. So I just kind of contemplate that somewhere down the line, that $10,000 number is going to be pretty de minimis compared to how we get involved in this project.
And
I would
that,
agree.
yeah, that really is the subject of what we're negotiating with Sun Health, to see about who's going to pay for and how can we get the infrastructure needed on the hilltop so that it can be used. Obviously, the city wants to see that happen, but Sun Health wants to see it happen also because it has an impact on their project.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Okay.
Mhm.
That was everything we had, Mayor and Council. If you'd like to look back at any of the funds, if you'd like, Paige, if you take us back to that let's see, to the third slide, please. There we go. Thank you. Again, I thought you might want to see this now that you've seen all the revenue sources and the projects broken down by revenue fund. Again, at the end of the day, you'll have 36.8 million in various revenues for fiscal year 22. And if council approves all the projects staff's recommending, at the end of the day, you'll have 7.8 million unrestricted funds.
And I had asked staff to put this work study together because I was curious exactly what our total fund balances were and what impacts the commitments we've made for the Litchfield Square and then commitments we've made for other significant capital projects like the stormwater project for Old Litchfield Road. I wanted to understand where we were going to be as we started to look at projects like putting in the improvements at Staggs Park or moving the wall at Camelback Park or doing some of the paving projects that we've got that are waiting to be done, like Litchfield Road after we get the roundabout done. So I wanted to make sure that I understood, and I wanted the council to understand where we would be as we started to try to fund some of these things, because the numbers are quite significant. What I didn't have a complete appreciation for is the significance of all of our fund balances. We had postponed a lot of expenses for different reasons at different times, the most recent one being COVID and not having any understanding of what was going to happen to our incoming revenues. As it turned out, our revenues came in pretty well. I mean, I don't think they were really dramatically negatively impacted, which is kind of surprising. Plus, we have received significant amounts of money from the federal government because of the various federal programs on COVID relief. So we end up with a fund balances that are very healthy, in part because we postponed a lot of capital expenses. Now we're at a point where there's no justification for us not spending money on some of the things that are needed in the community. And that's what we're, kind of embarking on now. And even after we do all of the projects that staff has identified at least up to this point, we're going to still be left with $7 million or more of surplus, which is a very healthy position to be in, given the fact that we still are at risk as we try to sell the land in Litchfield Square. That $7.8 million makes it a lot easier for us if we don't like a project in Litchfield Square, just to say no, and we'll hold that parcel until sometime in the future when we get a project that we as a council are happy with. So we're in a very positive position, and I wanted to have this review done so that we could all be on the same page as to what our financial condition was. And as we start looking at projects that we may want to fund in the future, we have an understanding of where the dollars are going to come for that funding. So hopefully this was helpful for everybody. I know it was helpful for me. I feel much more comfortable after having seen the breakdown of where our money is, what accounts it's in, and what kinds of things can we spend it on going forward, to benefit our community. So does anyone on the council have any questions or any comments that you'd like to make before we adjourn the meeting?
Vice Mayor.
Vice Mayor, please.
Yes. Mayor, in years past, we've always had a list of all the projects that we wanted to do. The top half of that list was projects that needed to get done, and the bottom half of that list was wish list projects that we may get to someday. And the top half of that list, we've completed some of those things. How have we gotten away from doing that list now? And is this going to be the process? And in this process, have we addressed everything that was on the top of the old list?
We meaning in terms of the way I view it, I think probably the way you view it is we have not gotten away from that list. Meaning the royal we, including staff, needs to update that list, and that list will be used in conjunction with what we went through tonight as we go forward and approve projects. That list, I think, was very helpful, and part of the problem is we have to now resurrect that list because we have so many different people here, who are working on it, that I'm not sure that anyone on current staff really appreciates what that list was. With the possible exception of our engineer, Woody Scouten. So that is something that I actually have asked the city manager to dig out of the archives and to update it and bring it back to council so we can review it.
Yeah, I think that'd be very helpful, because a lot of these things would be on the top of that list, and we'd have all those things that we know we needed to do someday, but they were kind of wish list items. And I'd like to see it. Maybe we've clicked a bunch of them off that list and just got them taken care of.
Yeah, we're going to go over the list in another maybe another work study even, because that list is very important, and it gives us a way to have in one place all of our capital improvement projects and to have them prioritized in a way that we can all understand them. So it will be coming back to council. It's just a question of in what format. Any other questions or comments from council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, John Romack.
Yes, Mr. Romack, Councilman Romack.
Thank you. We've talked about this in the past, and I don't know that it ever came up on any sort of expenditure, but talking about the Scout Park or Scout Lodge, I think that's something that probably needs to be listed on somebody's list as far as the potential for moving it or doing something with it that makes it probably more meaningful right there to Scout Park and gets it away from the church and the church property.
Yeah, the issue of Scout Lodge is one that really is now, kind of tied up with the issue of parking and use of land for Litchfield Square and buffers that we need to create between Litchfield Square and the neighborhood. And so I believe the city manager is forming a working group in which there'll be representatives from RAPCOM and representatives from the scouting community and representatives potentially from the council to tackle the issue of what are we going to do with Scout Lodge, if we're going to move it or we're going to try to reconstruct it, to look at all of those different questions and issues in enough detail to be able to bring a recommendation back to council so we can make a decision as a council on what we're going to do. And when we make that decision, we'll be able to put some numbers on what the financial costs are going to be.
It just seems like now is a pretty good time to be reviewing that, given the fact that Litchfield Square is actually coming to fruition. And that part of the park is kind of undone still,
Yeah,
really doesn't have a finish.
We are working on it. Staff is working on it. I can tell you that there are conversations even with Mel Schultz and JDM about the canal and what we do with the canal. And we actually had the city manager and I had a phone conversation with Mel Schultz a few days ago, and that was discussed because how we use that land is going to impact that canal. And JDM has some thoughts on what they want to see happen. So we've had conversations and they're ongoing, and it will come back to council in a form that council can will be able to know all the facts and make a decision on them. And I would assume shortly. I'm not shortly meaning the next 3 months, 4 months, something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, if not, we're going to adjourn this work study. We will gavel in the regular city council meeting in 5 minutes so that I can go get some water. So this meeting is done. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear it. That was my gavel. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, I didn't write down the exact time, but I'm assuming we've gone through about 5 minutes now because I've gotten my water and my cookies. So do we have everybody back, ready to go?
Vice Mayor's back.
All right, looks like we're missing maybe Ron
Brainerd's
Claire.
here.
I'm here, Tom.
Okay, and we got Brandon Watson, so we got everybody back. And I understand Councilman Donahue is not going to be here, is that correct?
She's running a few minutes late.
Okay, all right. So we're going to go ahead and get this regular council meeting gavelled into a session. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm wondering if Mr. Vice Mayor, if you'd like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Making this complicated on me.
Sorry,
Okay, everybody ready? You can't see me.
that's perfect.
Okay, you ready?
Ready.
Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of the United
the
States,
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty
Liberty and
and justice for all.
Good job, Mr. Vice Mayor. Thank you. Okay, are there any councilman reports? We'll start with Councilman Rostosi.
Nothing to report, sir.
Okay, Councilman Romack. Is that a no, Councilman Romack? No report? No report, okay. All right. We'll go on to, let's see, Councilman Claire.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councilman Brainerd Watson.
I can't remember if the last meeting I mentioned the Air Force Ball, but it was such a wonderful event. I'll mention it twice. Just a really, really nice evening celebrating the Air Force's 75th birthday, and it was an honor and a pleasure to be there.
Well, I appreciate you representing the city. Normally I go to those and I was not able to this time. So thank you for doing that for us. It is a wonderful event and it was nice that you got to go. Okay, how about the Vice Mayor?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Have I hit? I think I've hit everybody now. I think the only thing that of significance I just want to mention to council is that the city manager and I did have a meeting, a telephone meeting with Mel Schultz from JDM and went over some concerns that they have. They had 4 or 5 items that they wanted to talk about. The meeting was actually requested by Mr. Schultz. Those included the concern of what we thought we were going to do that would impact the canal that their water flows from the courses, the blue and the gold course over to the red course. They were also concerned about what we were doing and how we were going to impact their land with the roundabout that we're putting in. We actually have a small amount of easement that we need to acquire from them because of having to move the sidewalk a few feet. It's a very minor issue. They were concerned about the issue of the pipe and the easement for the pipe that comes along the northern boundary of Camelback Park. There are some land along that northern boundary that actually is still owned by Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. So we're in the process of trying to convince Goodyear Tire and Rubber that they should just deed that land to us because it's worthless land and they're paying taxes on it. Which doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's also, we don't really know exactly where the pipe is that brings the water from JDM wells that are to the north and east, where that pipe exactly runs along the northern part of the Camelback Park. So the pipe has to be located and we've got to work out some easements to allow them to continue to use that pipe to supply water to the golf courses. So there's some issues like that. They also wanted to let us know that they plan on coming back with another proposal for the 15 acres that, according to Mr. Schultz, would take into account all of the comments that had been made by the city and the council with the prior proposals. So we'll see what happens on that. We haven't seen anything from him, but if we do see something, then obviously the council will be, you will be apprised of it as soon as we get it. So, and that is that concludes what I had to report on. I don't know if we have a report from Ms. Schaefer for the Historic Society. Is she here? Can't see all the names here. I don't see her name. I'm going to assume that she's not here.
Correct, Mayor. I have not heard from her.
Okay, so then we'll go on to the city manager's report on current events.
Mayor and council, you have the October report in your packet. Just a few highlights. For the fall sports registration, we closed with over 500 participants, and that did exceed pre-COVID numbers. So we're very happy to see those numbers back up where they should be, and even better. I would point out to you that we're going to be awarded for one of our events. I'm not going to say more because it's not supposed to be public yet, but we'll send that out publicly as soon as we can. As far as City Center goes, the sewer system installation is now complete. The big hole, if you've seen back there, that's stormwater. So they're making good progress on that. We're actually going to be setting up a council photo in the pit in the next few weeks. So we'll be working on doing that if you want to come and participate. As far as the gas line, many of you have seen the traffic delayed on Litchfield Road. That is because the gas main that's being installed. That will probably go through mid-November. So again, that's what you're currently seeing. The pipe laying along Litchfield Road is the new gas main that will be installed soon. Pam's last day with the city after 20 years of service was last Friday. We currently have out the RFP for our marketing and brokerage services. That was supposed to close October the 8th, but we had 2 requests for extensions from 2 different companies on that. So we extended the RFP till this Friday, the 22nd, and we expect to see proposals from both those companies. So we bring those to you soon. Also, we have an RFQ out currently. The RFQ, of course, is for developers. That is out until November the 10th. We did receive our bond money. If you can see the balance, we closed out the bond and received our $15 million last week. So we're happy to see that done. Also, the auditors were here and they completed the court audit and met with the city audit, and we'll be presenting that this winter. Few changes to Avondale PD. We do have Chief Espinosa on the line with us. You may have seen the email about that. Help me if I'm wrong here, Chief, that former Chief Naningay.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. The former Chief Naningay is now the Public Safety Director for the City of Avondale, and Chief Espinosa was promoted from Deputy Chief to now the Police Chief of Avondale. And he's doing a great job. I'm very glad to have him here with us tonight. A few more things. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Matthew.
Please.
This is Ron. I apologize. Ann Donahue's out in the waiting room. Can someone please let her in?
She's in.
She's in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
she's
you.
muted. She's muted. That's why you don't hear her.
Good to see you. One thing also, you will see tonight the funding for the opioid program. And one thing on that, we're trying to see how we can spend that funding. It's limited to what you can do with it by the type of funding. It has to be spent on education and advocacy. And one thing we discussed, as you'll see in the report, would possibly be a prescription drug disposal site in the city, or maybe multiple sites. That's something a lot of cities do. I know that's something Avondale already does. So maybe that's something we could do with that funding, something to consider. Any questions on the October Council report?
Questions from council?
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
All right, I don't see any. So we'll go on to this meeting's response to call of the community. There were no requests to speak at the last meeting, so there's no response. Do we have any requests to speak at this meeting, Miss City Clerk?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, then we'll go on to this meeting's presentations. Mr. Williams, you have some new employees to introduce?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, we certainly do. We actually have 7. From our Public Works employees, we have Aaron Pacheco and Mario Ayala. Are either one of you on the call with us tonight? I don't think they are, but I don't want to miss anybody. Okay. Our site supervisors are Jaden, Bryson, and Anthony. Neither one of them are on the call, but we thank them for being our new site supervisors. For those of you that don't know what a site supervisor is, that's for our rec sports. I would also like to introduce 2 of our new full-time employees. I know both of them are on the call with us. Tammy, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Tammy Kassler. A lot of you probably know me from the community. I've been here forever. Happy to be an employee of the City of Litchfield Park at this time.
Thank you. Tammy's our new admin assistant in the clerk's office and also the city PIO, and she's getting a trial by fire with some of the PR issues we've had this week. She's doing a great job. I'm glad to have her. Also, Dan, are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, it's good to see you. Also, we have Dan Loftus here with us. Dan's our new plan coordinator. Dan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. I'm Daniel. I'm a recent graduate from ASU with a degree in urban planning, and I'm just happy to be here at Litchfield Park with all of you. That's it.
Thank you, Dan. We're glad to have you. Dan spent the last month with Pam before retirement, trying to be as much of a sponge as he possibly could be. And I think Dan is doing a good job, and we're glad to have him here with us as well.
Thank
Mayor
you.
and Council, that's all of our new employees for tonight.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. We want to welcome all the new employees. There's a grand tradition here that you have joined of service to our community, and we look forward to working with you so that our residents can continue to live in the best city in the world. So, and that's your challenge. So it's no easy challenge for all the new employees. That brings us to the Arizona Cities and Towns Proclamation. Proclamation is in your packet, so I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I do want to note that the cities and towns across Arizona are the governmental unit that provides direct services to all of the people who live in Arizona. We are the ones that provide them with their police and fire. We provide them with their city streets and sewer, and water, a whole variety of things that are necessary for them to be able to enjoy their life. We are the closest unit of government to the citizens. So I want to urge everyone to remember that this is Arizona Cities and Towns Week, and we should all be proud of the part we play in the city of Litchfield Park and the delivery of services to our residents. So thank each of you for your part in the city of Litchfield Park. Now we'll go on to another hot topic here, in-ground trash can survey. Mr. Williams.
Mayor, 1 second. Can everyone see full screen, or do you see the note screen?
We see a note screen, not full
Note
screen.
Okay. There you go. This is the presentation now on in-ground cans. You may remember a few months ago, we discussed in-ground cans and changes to garbage service. And one thing council wanted us to do was do a survey in the community of in-ground cans to see how many citizens supported eliminating or keeping it and what other issues there may be. And that is tonight's presentation. For the proposal, originally we sent out 212 surveys. That was a list that Waste Management provided us. That list left something to be desired, just to be honest. Of 212 addresses that were listed, we received 8 responses. As we got into that list, we found that the addresses weren't necessarily correct. Some of the streets, some of the houses didn't even have in-ground. Multiple issues anyway. So long story short, staff rebuilt that list by hand and came up with a new list of 366 in-ground can customers. And we received a much better response to that. I'm sorry, 1 second. Of the 366 surveys that were sent out, we received 125 responses. We also had it electronically or hard copy available. And you will see the numbers from hard copy and electronically in tonight's numbers. First question, again, these were done via SurveyMonkey. Would you support the elimination of in-ground cans on your property if Waste Management would provide a replacement can at no cost? If approved, the city would be removing the lids and filling the receptacles. As you'll see, only 43% said yes, while 56% said no. And when you include the numbers of people that brought in hard copies, 60% said no. So it was about 60% in favor of keeping in-ground the way it is today, or 40% in favor of changing it. If the in-ground cans were eliminated and the lids removed, would you prefer to fill in the dirt on your own or have the city fill them in? Obviously, they overwhelmingly wanted to see the city do it at 92%. If the cans were to be filled regardless of who and by what would your plan be to ensure they were aesthetically pleasing? Those broke up into a lot of different answers, so we broke them out. Replaced with rock, out of 93 total, 38. Replaced with grass, 18. Replaced with plants other, 12. Or replaced with concrete, 8. So again, most people would want to see it go back to like desert scape, with 38 being the most votes out of 93. What potential issues would you see in changing from in-ground to rolling cans? Out of 97 replies, 43 people said store in the can. Where am I going to put it? Odors, insects, rodents, 12 people. Compliance, 10 people. What they mean by compliance is, are people going to put their cans out when they need to be? Are they going to take them back when they need to be? So on and so forth. Street parking concerns, 6. An interesting was security with being out of town was 5. Several people felt that if they had to have an in-ground can and they were gone, someone may know by the can being left out there for days on end they weren't home, and that would make them subject for crime. Are you happy with the current trash recycling services that Waste Management provides? Obviously, this one is a testament to Waste Management. 91% said yes, they are happy with the current services being provided, while 8% said no. Do you have any suggestions that you believe would enhance or improve the garbage recycling services through Waste Management? Out of 83 replies, no suggestions, 33. Keep it the same, 15. Waste Management consistency, 6. By consistency, they meant the same times for bulk pickup, not missing trash cans, various issues. 3 people felt that Waste Management leaves litter behind sometimes. Clarification of what is recyclable, 2. I will tell you from city to city, that's a very common issue on what you can and cannot recycle. And other was 10, with random comments. Based on the survey results, staff does not recommend eliminating ground can service. Wonderful test of democracy. Again, 60-40, that roughly 60% of people that have in-ground want to keep in-ground, while 40% would support changing it. That's it. Any questions as far as Waste Management survey goes? Yes, sir.
Was that for me, Matthew?
Go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I thought maybe you noticed I unmuted. If one of those questions was directed at all of the people who do not have in-ground cans, and that question was, do you agree that you should be supporting financially all those people that have in-ground cans? I think you might get a different vote and take on where we should be going. I mean, I'm not sure what the answer is, but it's not really fair that everybody that drags their trash to the street, twice a week, is helping to subsidize the people that have in-ground cans. And I don't know what the answer is. Maybe there's a two-tiered approach. I don't know if that's even doable, to charge the in-ground cans more than the people that roll them out.
I agree with you, sir. I do think it would make a large difference in the survey. We only surveyed the people that have in-ground cans because it would affect them the most. If we interviewed everybody or did a survey with every citizen in the city, I think it would drastically change it. Because we have roughly about 1,200 residential homes that we serve for garbage customers. So if you figure that in-ground's about a little more than 25 to 30%, yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see that change, definitely. If that's something the council would like to do, we could certainly do that.
Councilman
I
Donahue.
think we know what the answer would be. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I don't think we need to do a survey to figure out the answer on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to confirm what Paul is. That's a very small percentage of people that want to keep it, and I think they're not speaking for everybody for sure. So
It's
we
also
only 300 out of 5,000 that still have in ground. right?
No, it's 300 out of 1,200. 366 out of 1,200.
Okay,
366 homes.
Right.
1/4.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that this topic has come up in the past, and it is one of those topics that people are very emotional about in terms of whether they are willing to get rid of their in-ground can. It's an issue that probably will become more of a forced issue because of the inability to continue to get a company like Waste Management to pick up the in-ground cans. Just between labor shortages and workman's comp issues, I think the issue probably is it's not going to go away, but it also has not in the past been a huge savings. So it's hard to get in. I don't know that this is a fight we want to pick just to save $5 a month.
It wouldn't even be that much. Waste Management Service told us it would be between $1 and $2 per month savings. And the mayor is right. It is an emotional issue. I'm trying to remember. I had 3 or 4 calls with people actually in tears about the idea of eliminating in-ground can service. That's one of the main reasons they moved here. And that's one of the things they love about Litchfield Park. And I heard that comment a lot, that when our electricity poles our power's underground and we have in-ground cans. That is definitely an emotional issue. Councilmember Romack, did you have a question also, sir?
Oh, Councilman Romack.
You're muted, sir.
Unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Matthew, I would say that, and I have in-ground trash cans and I don't use them. I use the rollout things. And so, but our neighbor has the underground or in-ground trash cans and both the lids are falling off. It looks like hell, but she doesn't know how to fix it. She doesn't know where to get the material to fix it. And I don't want her calling me, asking me to fix it. So
Councilman Romack.
What happens is I think that granted the in-ground cans can be difficult to work with. I've installed a lot of them over the years, but right now, it's hard to know where to buy either replacement parts or where to find somebody who's willing to come out and try to repair it. And that is a problem.
All right, well, I think we can probably safely move on to our next topic, but I will just add on the way out that I was one of the lucky consumers who had Councilman Romack install in-ground cans at my house. And I can tell you that we no longer have them. We took them out and got rid of them and filled them in with dirt. So, but Councilman Romack did a great job putting them in.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Is there a significant difference in price that people pay for the in-ground versus the rollout canisters?
No, ma'am. Everybody pays the same price.
Okay, so maybe, maybe if the waste management people want to reflect the difference in the cost of pulling the in-ground cans versus rollouts, through, the appropriate pricing, maybe they can drive it through the consumer rather than making it have to be a city edict.
The problem we have is that we have to have it all one way or all not that way. So
we don't right now, do we?
Now everybody has the ability to have an in-ground can. Everybody can bring a sack of garbage out and set it by the curb. You can bring out a rollout container. You can bring out your own trash container. You can do it any way you want, and they drive their truck around and their men deal with all of it. And the only other option is if we go to an automated system where you have to use their trash bin, their 50-gallon rollout bin, and you roll it out, and then they have an automated truck come by and pick it up. So the difference in cost, we've been told, is $1 or $2 a month. So it's not a significant cost savings if we were to switch and force everyone to use the same trash can, because it wouldn't be a matter of the way we do it now where everybody is free to do whatever they want to do. Everyone would have to use these 50-gallon rollout containers. So it's a little more complicated than just having a few people change change what they do. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, that takes us then to the Goodyear Fire Department report. We have Chief Cole here with us. Chief, I can see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, appreciate everybody, Mayor, Council. This is our September report for activities of the fire department in Litchfield Park. We had a total of 61 responses. 57 of those were emergency medical calls. We had one service call, 2 good intent calls, and 1 false alarm as well, to total 61. Did note the slight typo on the in your packet on the spreadsheet under the incident fiscal year. That's been repaired. Apologize for that. Just a bad keystroke. So as far as the ratio of calls in the Litchfield Park as opposed to the city of Goodyear, Litchfield Park had 11 incidents in September per 1,000 population, and Goodyear had 10 incidents per 1,000 population. Other activities for the month: fire prevention, we had 2 plan reviews, 2 construction permits, 2 construction inspections, and 11 occupancy inspections. So unless there's any questions, sir, really a fairly standard month. We're trending below last year on total call volume, trending out, but it's only the 3rd month of the fiscal year. So there's a lot of time to come yet.
Okay, any questions or comments from council? Don't see any, Chief. Thank you for your service. Thank you for coming to us and providing us this report. Again, give our thanks to our local engine. We appreciate all the things that you guys do for us.
Well, again, sir, it's a privilege for the men and women of the Goodyear Fire Department to serve Litchfield Park, and thank you.
Thank you. All right, this takes us then to the report from the Avondale Police Department. We have Chief Espinoza with us. Welcome, Chief. I'm happy to be one of the first, at least in an official capacity at council, to welcome you as chief and not assistant chief. And we're happy to see the promotion.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate it. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I would like to report that in the month of September, our staff responded to a total of 244 calls for service. Of those 244 calls for service, 117 were officer generated. That is a 52% rate. I really don't have any significant reports for you guys. However, I would like to point out one interesting thing that we're noticing. Our enforcement at Old Litchfield and Wigwam has been the same. However, the number of traffic offenses has decreased quite a bit. We believe that has to do with our citizens' driving behavior changing. Unfortunately, our staff has seen, those are good news. However, the bad news is that our staff has seen an increase of bicyclists at this same intersection, violating more traffic laws than before. That obviously causes an issue for drivers. So we are starting a campaign to educate our bicyclists. One additional thing that I would like to point out is that not in the month of September, however, in early October, we saw an increase of vehicle burglaries, and almost 100% of those vehicle burglaries are due to people leaving their vehicles unlocked. Therefore, you're going to see our staff passing out bulletins, door hangers with our program, Lock It, Hide It, Keep It. And we hope that that will encourage people to lock their vehicles, lock their doors in order to avoid being victimized. At this point, I'll take any questions.
Okay, questions, but Councilman Romack looks like. Councilman Romack, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go. I would have a question, and I brought this up, I think, last month. Is it would be nice, and by the way, congratulations, Chief.
Thanks, sir.
It would be nice if you could give us some sort of, on a monthly basis, how those cameras that we invested in, how those are helping, or are they helping in police work, if you would.
Yes, and I can tell you that this month, the month of September, we did have 2 hits. Both of the hits were stolen plates. One of them turned out to be, it was somebody that parked their vehicle at a different location. The plate was swapped and they were not aware that their plate had been stolen. The other vehicle, actually our staff immediately stopped the vehicle when it entered Litchfield Park. Upon contacting the driver and the vehicle, they recognized that this suspect actually used a stolen plate trying to come into our town. In fact, that same driver had a second stolen plate in the vehicle. I think the cameras are a very effective tool for us to fight crime. In fact, we're due to the success here in Litchfield Park, we're looking at them in Avondale as well.
Thank you for that. But I would encourage probably you and us to get that report on a regular basis.
Will do, sir. I will make sure that I add it to the monthly report, if that's okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you for your report. Please thank the 5 officers for the service they give to us each and every day. We appreciate that, and it's nice to see the police car around town now on a regular basis. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, that takes us to we have our finance report from Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I have the finance report for the first quarter of the fiscal year. So I'd like to start with our September sales tax revenue. Our retail sales for the second month in a row are down. This month, they're down 16% over September of last year. I believe there's 3 things that are contributing to this. The first one being, you can see our online sales are up 41%. I believe some of that was just being incorrectly reported. I believe the second thing could be a lot of the overbuying was taking place last year, making our sales higher than normal. And there's also a shopping center that opened in Verrado that could very well be taking shoppers away from our city. Fortunately, our restaurant and bars, they're up 25% over last September. Utilities are nearly flat, just down 2%. Our rentals are up 9%. And then the other category, which is made up of several different smaller categories, including tourism type activities, is up 23%. So in total, we are just down 1% over September of last year, up roughly $4,000. But in total, year over year, we're up 4% this quarter over the first quarter of fiscal year 21. And then our construction sales tax is up 22% this September over last September. This is really good news. And up 101% this fiscal year to date compared to last fiscal year to date. And that's because last month we received a $400,000 speculative builder payment that we were not anticipating. So our construction sales tax is going to come in much higher than we had originally anticipated. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about sales tax if there are any.
Questions from the council? All right. I can't see everybody, so I'm going to assume, since I didn't hear anyone, that there are no questions. Thank you for your report. Looks like we're having another good year. So with that, so far so good.
So far so good. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate all the efforts you put on keeping our finances organized and well reported. That takes us down to a report on Litchfield Square update, looks like from Mr. Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just a quick update on the construction activity. The sewer system is now essentially complete. Just a few minor details to wrap up on that when we pave the streets. Most of the Liberty water issues have now been resolved. We finally now have a connection that we can make into Wigwam Boulevard with a new water system. And that water system is now under construction, the Litchfield Square water system. As you all know, we've been digging a big hole out there for the underground stormwater retention system. We ran into a layer of sand, which had us scratching our heads for a while, but our geotechnical engineer came in and advised to just go ahead and build on top of it. As long as it's contained, it's a good solid base. So we have done that. And the slab for the underground retention system has been poured. And we were hoping to, in mid-November, we're hoping to see the first of the precast concrete units be placed. That'll be, for construction nerds like me, that'll be kind of exciting. It'll be a big crane and trucks coming in from California on a scheduled basis. They're having some issues at the precast plant, so that might be delayed a little bit, but we hope to have that started sometime in November. And then the mass grading is about 65% complete on the site. You can start to see the shapes of some of the streets that will be built in the future. And I think that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Okay, are there any questions from council concerning the Litchfield Square progress? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll move on then to our consent agenda, item 9A through F. Is there any member of council that would like to take any item off of the consent agenda for further discussion before voting? Okay, I don't see any. So with that, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda items 9A through F?
This is Tom, so moved.
Moved by Councilman Rostosi, it looks like seconded by Councilman Donahue. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda is adopted as presented. We'll go on to business items, 10A. 10A, you have a resolution that was sent to you. I don't know, Councilman or either city manager or Ms. Roth, did you send out the maps that I provided you from the Redistricting Commission?
Mayor, I didn't see the email until just before the work study session, but they were sent out.
All right. Well, let me try to explain to the council what this is all about and what has happened today that changes this a little bit in terms of what I would like to have the council do. The Redistricting Commission is required by the Arizona State Constitution and the federal Constitution, so that after every census, the district boundaries for legislative districts and congressional districts are modified or redrawn so that each district, so far as much as possible, reflects an equal amount of population. As you can probably appreciate, the process of drawing new district boundaries is a very political process, because it can, as you draw the boundaries, you can start influencing how the vote tallies will probably come out of different districts based upon whether you believe you're putting more Democrats or more Republicans in any particular district. So there's always issues with these new districts. There are some legal requirements that are kind of an overlay over the general requirement that the districts are supposed to be a relatively equal population. So you have requirements for things like districts are supposed to be they're supposed to be drawn in a way that the district itself has a shape that seems to make sense. So normally the district is going to be a square or a rectangle, or it's going to be maybe a triangular slice, and it may have different lines. The lines may not all be parallel and perpendicular, but when you look at it, it looks like a normal thing you draw for a group of people. That is one that has been violated in this state all the time. And our District 13, in which Litchfield Park is in right now, Legislative District 13, is a perfect example of a district that doesn't look like it would be drawn by anyone. It looks like a scribble that a fifth grader would make trying to come up with some puzzle piece. It goes from Yuma to Litchfield Park to Wickenburg, and kind of meanders around and captures pieces of a variety of communities. So our current district violates that in terms of the spirit of what that rule is. Another one of the rules is that you're supposed to draw the districts in such a manner that what are called communities of interest, that those communities of interest are grouped together. So an example of that is many people would say that Litchfield Park, Goodyear, and Avondale, possibly Buckeye, but certainly the three cities of Litchfield Park, Goodyear, and Avondale, we are a community of interest because of, and it goes back to a variety of things like our shared history. We literally were all started, we're all here because of the efforts of Paul Litchfield, Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. We share school districts, both elementary and high school districts. We share concerns over things like transportation and the impact of growth and things like that. We have a variety of interests that are the same or very similar. So we're a community of interest within those three communities. We have similar shared interests with other cities or other areas within the West Side, but typically our political issues, they really become divided based upon the Agua Fria River. And the reason for that is historical in terms of how these communities grew up from being small communities to bigger communities. That river was a very important dividing line in terms of the way things developed. But in any event, so we had we're going through the redistricting process right now, and up through the way that it works is there's a 5-member commission. There are 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and then there's a 5th person that is an independent. So they're not associated with either party. They're not registered either as a Democrat or a Republican. And they meet various qualifications to be called an independent. So these 5 members then have a staff that are demographers and graph drawers or whatever, and the staff puts together these maps and they bring them to the commission, and the commission has hearings and they consider the maps, and then they modify the maps, and they go through this iterative process of having maps and making modifications, having new maps, getting comments, having new maps, getting more comments. So they go through different drafts that they approve, and up through draft 3, the city of Litchfield Park was in a district that was basically Litchfield Park, a piece of Avondale, a piece of Goodyear, a piece of Buckeye, Luke Air Force Base, and then a little bit of the communities that go to the east towards the 101. So, and it was a district it wasn't a perfect square, but when you looked at it, you said, yeah, that looks like they weren't trying to gerrymander any weird population situations. They just drew a little box here and it all made sense. So that's the way it was through number 3. There was a variety of people from the Northwest Valley who were very upset because of the lines that were being drawn in the Northwest Valley, because the city of Surprise, Sun City West was being split up in a way that the political influence of those communities was going to be dramatically reduced. And so there was a real uproar with comments being made to the Redistricting Commission. So then we ended up with draft number 4. In draft number 4, Litchfield Park now was taken out of the district that had Goodyear and Buckeye and Avondale in it, Luke Air Force Base. And basically we were made the western edge of an urban district that stretched east in through Maryvale and various parts of Phoenix and pieces of Glendale that went in past the 101. And that map was, I provided that map to you. So there was a lot of concern about that with different individuals in the Southwest Valley, that the Litchfield Park was going to be basically losing all of its political influence because of the way it was being grouped in this district, and it was not going to be in with other communities that had shared interests. So our interests with much of the area that we were being put with would just be dramatically different. And so it would be very difficult to elect a legislator that could represent the entire district because the interests are so different that it just doesn't work well. So that's what prompted me to send this resolution to you to to basically object to the Redistricting Commission for the placement of Litchfield as the western piece of this urban district to the east, as opposed to leaving us with the growing areas that we've been associated with forever. Of Goodyear, Avondale, Litchfield Park, Buckeye. So I, along with others, filed opposition to the draft for map scheme because I didn't think it was good for our residents. They actually came out today with a new draft 5, which our legislative district in draft 5, we're going to become LD 25. Our legislative district now goes back to what it was being proposed in draft 3. So we're being grouped again with a significant part of Avondale, Goodyear, and some pieces of Buckeye and Luke Air Force Base, piece of Glendale, that are up in that area. So we are back in an area where I would say we are part of a community of interest. We share a community of interest with the people who are in this district. So I don't need the resolution to be adopted by the council tonight as it was presented in your packet, because we've gone back to something which is what we asked for in the resolution. The Redistricting Commission appears to be going back to what we were going to ask them for anyway. But what I would like the council to do is to authorize the city manager and the mayor to continue its efforts, to continue our efforts on behalf of the city to try to make sure that, to the extent that we can try to make sure that Litchfield Park is put in a district in which it is part of a community of interest. We have a shared community of interest with the majority of that district. So that's kind of a recap of where we're at right now. I think it is actually very important for us over for the next 10 years. We need to be in a legislative district, and it's not so much the congressional districts, but it's a legislative district for our state legislature. That district needs to have in it communities that share the same sorts of interests, because those legislators are tremendously important when these issues come up at the state legislature. This last legislative session was a very, very difficult one for many cities and towns. It was a difficult one for many of the interests that we have on the Southwest Valley, and our representatives in the legislative district did a very, very good job on our behalf. It would be very difficult for those 3 individuals to do the same kind of job if the interests across the district were not reasonably shared. If we had tremendously different interests, those legislators are not going to be able to represent our interests in a way that could be helpful to the residents who live in this district. So I would ask you to authorize both the city manager and the mayor to continue weighing in with the Redistricting Commission if the commission ends up with a map where Litchfield Park is not placed in a legislative district with which it shares a community of interest of the other communities in that district. So that's a recap of where we're at.
Do you need a specific motion or can we?
Well, I would like a motion just so that I'm not out there kind of hanging out by myself. I'd like to be able to say the council is behind Litchfield Park being included in a district where it shares a community of interest with the other communities in that district. That's something that we want to make sure that the Redistricting Commission honors.
So,
and either way, as an individual citizen, I'm going to continue to speak out. If they do something that puts Litchfield in a district where we don't share a community of interest with the other communities, I'm going to speak out as an individual with it. But I would rather speak out as the mayor of the city of Litchfield Park, a representative of the council, saying the council does not support being placed in a district in which we do not share a community of interest with the other communities.
Well, I'll be glad to make that motion. Do you need specific verbiage or can we just motion to approve what you said?
I think a motion to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I make a suggestion, Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, the item on the agenda is to discuss some possible action to adopt a resolution opposing the draft map. You've asked for something, I think, totally different than that, and maybe we need to stick closer to this. So would it be possible to have a motion to adopt a resolution opposing the draft maps number blah, 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 and supporting draft map number blah, blah, blah?
Yes. In fact, the resolution, the way it's presented actually is very close to doing that already. And it could very well just be adopting the resolution as it was provided to you in the council packets. Because it is specific to, the resolution is specific to draft map 4.1, which is the map that took us out of the community of interest. And it specifically talks about the importance of being in a district with where we share a community of interest with the other communities. So that's all it's all in the resolution the way it is now. So we could just adopt the resolution as it is, and then I'll use that resolution, as a
Mayor?
in our comments to the Redistricting Commission.
Mayor?
Do you need support of the other maps or the last map that included in that?
It asks basically for them to go back to a map similar to 3.1, which is what they've done with map 5.1. So it would be handy. With the resolution the way it is now, I can use that if they go back from 5.1 to 6.1, and it's not like 3.1. So the resolution can be used the way it is.
Mayor?
Okay.
Yes. Councilman Brand Watson.
Could that motion be worded that we would like to support a redistricting that is largely similar to 3.1, as you've been saying, and a tag on to the end of that, authorize the mayor and the city manager to continue to and tie the two together with that?
I think you could add that additional direction to the staff and to the mayor. I don't know, Mr. Estes, did you see that as being a problem with the open meeting requirements that we stick to the agenda items?
No, I think that's fine. What my suggestion would be to approve a motion that says something to the effect of, we approve the substance of the resolution and authorize the mayor and city manager to take necessary efforts to ensure that the redistricting is done in a way as detailed in the resolution.
3.1.
That way you're sticking closer to what the actual resolution is.
Mr. Vice Mayor, are you happy with that?
I'm struggling with how that's different than just approving the motion or the resolution.
I don't think it's dramatically.
What do you want, Mayor? Yeah.
It actually is probably the easiest, the cleanest thing is just to approve the resolution as it's presented. You know, with the fill,
Okay.
we have to fill in the number of people, which is 6,000 something. That needs to be filled in. Other than that, the resolution is an accurate description of what I told you happened until today. And what happened today is consistent with what we have asked them to do, which is, you know, what we asked them is to put us in a district with communities which share a community of interest, such as draft number 3, which is what we want. And kind of draft number 5 has really come back to draft number 3. So the resolution as it is fine.
Then I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution as presented.
All right, is there, with the addition of we're going to add in the number of residents, which I didn't have that number last night. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved to second. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the resolution is adopted. Now we'll go on to the public hearing for the St. Peter Episcopal Church use permit.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, John Romack. I am intimately involved in the church in a number of ways, and I need to recuse myself from this particular debate.
All right, thank you, Councilman Romack. Put yourself on mute and we'll get back to you once we're done with it. All right. The public hearing is hereby declared open. Is there a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Schoaf, members, council members, members of the public and city staff. Brief staff report here. We don't have a PowerPoint presentation prepared for this item, but I do have a Google Street View of the church and the buildings under discussion for tonight's recommended motion. So St. Peter's is back. It's been about 5 years since you last saw them, and they're more or less seeking reapproval for a use permit to allow the 3 modular buildings associated with their Montessori school. They were in front of you in 2016, and at that time, the council reviewed again the request for a use permit to allow those buildings, which originally started way back in probably 15 or 16 years ago. And so they've been adopted and approved every time they've been requested. And the school is, the church is represented tonight. The gentleman is here from the church. Mr. Wilson is in attendance. And they contest, of course, that they've taken very good care of the buildings. They've refinished the exterior and stucco and painted those buildings to more or less match the church. They've put new flooring in, and they treat the buildings almost as though they're site-built buildings. And so during the discussions leading up to prior to P&Z, which acted on this item unanimously to recommend approval last month in September, staff suggested that perhaps we should drop the 5-year time stipulation in regards to the use permit. I think it's been clearly displayed by the church that they've met all of the prior conditions of approval related to their use permit in the past. The buildings have been very well maintained and are an integral part of the church property and the surrounding community. We've had no complaints regarding the use of manufactured buildings on the property, nor have there been any generalized maintenance complaints at the facility or the property. So we propose removing the time stip as it's becoming kind of a calendar marker, if you will, that the item just simply comes back to get your reapproval every 1 year, 5 years, depending on what the stip was. So we thought, we could always propose dropping the condition if the council would support that. And should something change in the future, should the buildings become unsightly or the position of the council be to remove all modular buildings from properties, it's feasible that the use permit could be initiated for revocation if it was in a somewhat of a drastic situation. Otherwise, just a reminder to the council, should there ever be any maintenance or property maintenance issues associated with the church, the city maintains the ability to conduct site inspections and issue citations if there's any property maintenance issues. You don't need to consider revocation of a use permit simply because of a property maintenance issue. So That being said, staff would be recommending approval of the application. And if you don't mind, Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen of the street view of the church. It'll just take me one second here. See if I can find it. 1 second. Oh, yeah, I need to change my windows. Give me 1 second. Okay. So I will share the street view of the church, if you don't mind. So this is coming in, of course, I'll hopefully not make everyone dizzy. Of course, Old Litchfield Road's over here. We're on Desert Ave, and I'm just going to pivot, and you can see the Montessori School in the background. Many of you are already, of course, very familiar with the property, but you can see how the buildings have been refinished, so they look like site-built structures. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, especially in regards to the consideration for dropping the 5-year time step.
Okay, if you could take the picture down so we can see everybody again.
Yep.
Thank you. There was, I think, a question about the dropping the time stipulation from the vice mayor. Vice Mayor, do you have anything further you'd like to say on that? Or question?
Well, I am in favor of St. Peter's and their use. I mean, they've done a phenomenal job out there. I'm struggling with the concept, though, of removing the time limits from a use permit. And I'm struggling with whether that's good public policy for the city to start doing that with use permits, down the line with other entities if that pops up. And I also questioned, and I don't know the answer to this. I've not put enough thought into it, but I put these thoughts out earlier so the city attorney and Jason could look at it. But does eliminating the time limit actually turn this use permit into a variance that's been disguised as a use permit? And if so, is that also bad policy? And does it meet the statutory requirements regarding variance not be self-imposed? My suggestion was, I don't want to see the church back in 5 years. I don't see a reason for it. And so my suggestion was maybe we just change it so that it's 10 years or heck, make it 15 years. But we still, everything still fits in all the right slots in our code and state statutes, and there's no question with what we've done.
I think your suggestion is a good suggestion, because I also I'm not comfortable with taking the time limit out entirely, because I think with use permit, if you're really going to respect what a use permit is, it's intended to go for a certain period of time, and then it's supposed to be reviewed again. It's not a variance that goes on forever. So I would be in favor of going to maybe even a 15-year time period within the granting of this use permit, and then at least it minimizes the number of times that it has to come back to council. But at least I agree. I think we should check all the boxes and do this in a way that's consistent with the way use permits are normally administered. Are there any other questions or comments from council? If not, we're going to close the public hearing. Okay, seeing none, public hearing is closed. And now we're going to go to item C on our agenda, which is a consideration, discussion and possible action to adopt resolution 21-501, granting a use permit for the 3 modular buildings at the St. Peter's Episcopal Church. Is there any further discussion, or is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I had a question.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Yes, Councilman Rostosi.
I was just curious, from the city attorney's perspective, is there a problem with us having no end date on this, or do we have to have an end date, or how's that work? Paul had a question, but we didn't really answer it, I don't think.
Right. Well, a use permit's different from a variance. A use permit is a request to allow use that's permitted in the zoning ordinance, but it may adversely impact adjacent properties. So that's the one consideration that's taken in. Whereas a variance is a request to allow a deviation from the development standards, such as a setback requirement. So the use permit is specifically authorized under the zoning ordinance, subject to the permit. And a lot of times, a lot of jurisdictions do not place time restrictions on use permits, because use permits actually run with the land. And the reason for that being is that if that use is allowed and permitted, there would have to be some substantial change for that use to no longer be allowed and permitted. Was there a change in the circumstances? For example, was there a change that the city didn't want modular facilities, buildings anymore within the town at all? And I would note that under section 33 of the city zoning code, under use permits, the only time frame that is really listed under a use permit is there's a 1-year time frame to secure a building permit within which, or to seek an extension of time in order to get that use permit. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with a use permit, you're talking about the construction of a physical building, whether it's a modular building and all the cost and expense that goes into that, or I believe another use permit that was done a few years ago was the storage facility off of Camelback and Dysart. And I don't believe that one was established with a time frame. So you can go without a time frame without it having be considered anything other than a use permit. That's allowable. If you want to have a time frame, I would suggest a much longer time frame than the 5 years. But it's not something that would create this as a variance, because it's not a variance. It's a use that's permitted based off of the circumstances, not something like a modification of your zoning code, of your setback requirements and stuff like that, that would require a variance to meet those 4 standards that you have to meet for a variance.
Mr. City Attorney, does our zoning code now allow for the use of, basically trailers? I mean, I would have thought that would not be something that would be generally permitted within, as a building within Litchfield Park. Is my understanding just wrong? Somebody could put a trailer on one of their lots and that would be within the uses allowed in our zoning code.
Well, I believe that's why you have the use permit here for this, is because you're allowing that use. And there's a difference between a trailer and a modular building that is essentially set up as a site construction, full-time facility.
I thought the reason that we did this use permit, and it was done, I think, before I was even on the council, probably. But I thought the purpose was that without the use permit, it would not be permissible to put these modular buildings there and use them in the way that they're being used.
I don't have that part of the
Mayor,
zone. If Jason can speak to that.
Mayor and council, yes, that's correct. The use of modular buildings would not be allowed by right without a use permit. The use permit gives the P&Z, staff P&Z and council and the citizen review process the opportunity to consider whether the use in the specific situation for which it's requested would have a negative impact. So through the application process, through the church demonstrating the site location, the way that they were going to dress up those buildings, stucco the exteriors, paint them, and use those buildings, they demonstrated that they would not indeed have a detrimental impact, which was the reason why the council acted to approve it. Since that time, there really have been no material changes to the request for many years. And so that's why it came back. And as the city attorney said, certainly you can levy, a time stip if you want to go 10 years. That's not uncommon. Sometimes we casually refer to these as like wrecking ball steps, which is time steps for buildings and structures, because in theory, if you decided not to renew it, they would actually have to go out there and remove those buildings from the site, disrupting the school operations, for example. But if the consideration is let's stay consistent, then maybe give them, instead of 5 years, 10 years. Certainly we can put that condition back on there.
Are there other questions or comments from council?
One more question for me, sir. Is it normal that we have time stipulations on our use permits, or is it normal that we don't?
through the mayor, Councilmember Rostasi, I think the use permit time steps for structures are becoming less common across jurisdictions because they are like the wrecking ball step. Use permit time stipulations for actual uses, for example, you want to allow commercial uses to have auto car sales. So you might say, okay, well, we'll let you do 5 years. And if we don't like how this is really working out for the city, then we may not renew that. But you didn't spend X number of dollars to build, like, let's say the self-storage facility, which is several $1 million. We're not going to take away that ability because it messes things up for financing and sales of that property and things like that. In this case, I think it's marginal. It's a modular use. So the idea being that a modular building would be a temporary use of that structure because it can be removed fairly easily. In this case, they've more or less built those buildings into the site and don't have any intention of removing them. So I think this council certainly has the discretion to either use the condition or not. I'm not giving you a definitive answer like yes or no, because this is modular. So by nature, it's temporary. So I would suggest that it could go either way or the other. And if there's comfort in one way, then certainly understood.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Mayor Watson.
That I come from education, and there's an adage there that once a modular gets put on a campus, it's there forever. And I just kind of feel like keeping a time stipulation in this is important for future precedents, so that if there's another entity that wants to put a modular on, we have the right to come back in, and keep track of things and tabs of it. And if it doesn't get, obviously, the church has been really good about maintaining these, but sometimes modulars aren't well maintained. And I just would hate for someone to just be able to say that we've set precedent by taking the date stipulation or the time stipulation off of this and tying our hands in future. I don't see anything wrong with extending the length of time, because they've certainly proved themselves worthy of the trust, and not needing to go through the time and the effort and the expense every 5 years. But I just don't want to see it go away all the way, so that we don't end up with a temporary building that becomes permanent.
Okay, is there a motion to approve this special use either with or without a time limit? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve 15 years.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a so moved motion, which we're gonna defer to the vice mayor's 15-year motion and see if there's a second for the 15-year special use motion.
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion is approved. Next item is the adoption of resolution concerning the Camelback Road annexation. Is there a presentation, Mr. Scouten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. No formal presentation, but let me just kind of describe how we got to this point and what this resolution and IGA contains. As you probably know, over the last several years, we've been discussing with the county improvements on Camelback Road, primarily in the area between the Goodyear city limits and Litchfield Road, because that roadway is under capacity and needs to be improved. And we wanted to control how that was going to be improved, i.e. no more than 4 travel lanes and a median. So those discussions kind of dropped off for a while, and then the idea of having Camelback Road be signed as a no through truck zone gave this discussion with the county a new impetus. So we have been discussing with the county how we could annex portions of Camelback Road east of the Goodyear city limits. We wanted to go ahead and take over the portion between Litchfield Road and Dysart Road in order to be able to put a no through truck sign
east of Dysart Road so that truck drivers would have the opportunity and be alerted to the fact that they need to make a turn at Dysart Road. The county, however, would not let us put a no through truck sign in the right-of-way east of Dysart Road, their right-of-way. So then we started looking at going further east in order to be able to put those no through truck signs in what would become our right-of-way. And we looked at eventually going all the way to El Mirage Road because we have Monument Point out there, and it made sense, you know, from the standpoint of having Monument Point connected in with the city by way of Camelback Road. So the county agreed to provide, in return for annexing that right of way from Goodyear city limits to El Mirage Road, agreed to provide us with $3.511 million, $3,511,000 to go toward future widening and improvement of the roadways in that segment. That most of that would go toward the widening of the south half of Camelback Road between Goodyear and Litchfield Road, because the county failed to make that developer of the greens at that time to either do that widening or to provide money for that widening. So the county's in essence making up for that error back whenever it was. The north half of that portion of Camelback Road, of course, will be built by Sun Health as they develop out their project. The pavement going east of Litchfield Road is about 20 years old, and the county has done some pretty good maintenance of it. They've done some crack seal and some micro seal over the years, but eventually we'll need to do a mill and overlay to replace the surface of that roadway because it is beginning to deteriorate. So some of that money, some of the 3.5 million would go towards that. And then the segment east of Dysart Road is actually in pretty good shape. Some of it is approaching 20 years, but it's in good condition and would probably be, I would guess, somewhere between 7 to 10 years before we'd have to do anything to that pavement. But eventually that would require a mill and overlay as well. The other thing that the city would be inheriting as a part of this annexation would be traffic signals at 4 intersections. And those are Litchfield Road, Dysart Road, 127th Avenue, which is the brand new signal they just put in, and Wigwam Creek Boulevard. So we would need, since we're not set up to maintain traffic signals, we would need to enter into an agreement with the county so that they could maintain those signals. And that we would put some time limit on that agreement so that in the future, we could go out and see if some of the other cities can give us a better price for maintaining those traffic signals. So to kind of sum up, the overall, we're probably looking at about $5 to $5.5 million worth of improvements over the next 15 years or so on this roadway. And that would include adding sidewalks, landscaping, and doing the pavement treatments that I talked about. As you know, there's essentially no landscaping, and there are very little, if any, sidewalks on either side of Camelback Road in the western portion of it anyway. We've also talked about doing lighting, but I'm not sure that lighting would be an important part of this project at this point, and maybe not in the future. So the IGA basically says that we will annex the right of way and the county will pay us the 3.5 million. We would be responsible for managing any and all projects for improvements and pavement rehab. Their funding would not become available before June 1st of next year, 2022. But after that point, and once we complete the annexation process, we can invoice them for the full 3.511 million. And I think, Mayor, that's all I have to discuss at this point.
Okay. Are there questions from council? Mr. Vice Mayor, did you have anything you wanted to talk to staff about on this annexation of Camelback Road?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I don't know if everybody's seen, what I wrote, but I'm really happy with our financial situation that we're in now, and I worry about us going on a spending spree, taking on all kinds of stuff because we do have a little bit of money right now. I'm sincerely struggling with assuming Camelback Road and the maintenance and the obligations in perpetuity, especially when I find out now we're going to come out of pocket maybe over the next 15 years, millions of dollars to maintain a road. And if we analyze the boundaries of that road that are within our city limit, there's a huge amount that's, one side or the other, or sometimes some places on both sides that aren't even in our city. And we're going to all of this. I mean, Avondale said that they would not agree, they'd pay part of the money if they can annex Wigwam Creek. I question whether that they can. And they also said they would only pay to maintain one lane because the other lane is really used for regional purposes. So Avondale's going to take over one lane and we're going to take over 3 lanes. Avondale thought it was a bad idea to take over their half of the road. I'm struggling with the concept of us taking over any of it. What do our citizens gain? I mean, we're trying to prohibit the no trucks, but is it worth? Is this the way to do it? And is now the time to do it? Are we better off waiting this thing out a little bit, seeing if the trucks are a problem, seeing if there isn't some other solution to keeping the trucks out of the city, see if the county won't change their mind and get tired of spending all this money maintaining, that road and come back with some kind of better deal. I also remember back 15 plus years ago, we entered into an agreement with the county when they widened Camelback to 4 lanes between Dysart and Litchfield Road, but nobody seems to remember or to know what that is. I know there were some governmental entities, including one that gave me a speeding ticket, that thought that Camelback Road was in Litchfield Park. And I remember we took, part of that in also as a bound on our boundary. But now apparently we don't have that. So I'm questioning our records also in here. But I don't see the benefit to our citizens to spend what looks like multi-millions of dollars taking on land and roads that benefits Avondale, Glendale, and the county. I do agree taking Litchfield Road to the Goodyear boundary. I think we should stay firm with that. That's what we've been trying to get out of the county all along. And to have them throw all the rest of this stuff in here makes them sweeten the pot more. Thank you.
This resolution would allow for us to continue negotiating with the county to try to improve the financial aspects of the transaction for Litchfield. I have strongly support assuming jurisdiction over the road all the way to Dysart. And the reason for that is related to the trucks. It actually, I would say that I get very few complaints from citizens about anything related to living in Litchfield Park. People generally are really happy with the community they live in. They're happy with their neighbors. They're happy with everything about being in Litchfield Park. The only exception to that is the trucks on Camelback. I mean, literally, it is the only topic that comes up that's negative is about all the trucks on Camelback. A good example of that is today. I was literally going to Fry's this morning, and there were 4 semi trucks, four rock semi trucks with, belly dump type semi trucks that were coming eastbound on Camelback. And so then I'm sitting there at the intersection with Litchfield Road and Camelback, and there's just four huge trucks. And people may not appreciate how noisy that is for the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods along Camelback, all the way from the Goodyear boundary to Dysart Road, those individuals have tremendous amount of noise, literally 24/7, from these big old trucks that I think we should do what we can do to minimize that to the fullest extent that is possible. And I don't see any way that we're going to be able to minimize it if we don't get jurisdiction of the road so that we can actually enforce a no truck ordinance in the same way that Goodyear has jurisdiction of Indian School, and they are enforcing a no truck ordinance on Indian School between Litchfield Road and the 303. So if we don't have the same authority for a significant enough portion of Camelback so that we can post the signs properly and we can actually police it, we'll never be able to do anything about those trucks. And that issue is going to get worse, not better, as far as I can say.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I should have mentioned an important point here, and that is that if you remember during the cross-dock discussions and all of the input that we were getting from the city of Goodyear and so on, I think we came close to having the city of Goodyear pushing for Camelback Road to be a 6-lane arterial. So one of the advantages of controlling the right-of-way is that we have control over how wide the street can be. If it remains county right-of-way, the county could come in and decide to widen it to a 6-lane arterial.
And it actually is in the MAG transportation plans. It is shown as a major arterial artery. It's major arterial, and in which 6 lanes is what they anticipate it will be. Now, I don't think that's realistic for the whole length of it, because you've got areas that are under the control of Phoenix. I don't think Phoenix is going to agree to making it a 6-lane road, but it could certainly be 6 lanes from the 303 up across the bridge, maybe. So that is another factor. If we're going to try to have a seat at the table that keeps that road as a 4-lane road, it is very difficult to sit at that table when we've gone over the maps. We've had it studied, and our total ownership on Camelback Road is about 6 inches across Camelback at the intersection on the western boundary of the intersection with Litchfield Road. And we have 6 or 8 inches across there, and that's it. So it's hard to say with a straight face that we're going to prevent them from doing whatever they want to do to that road, as long as it's in their jurisdiction. Councilman Romack.
Thank you. I commiserate with your example of the belly dump semis, but I think that there's operations like La Loma and other projects under construction that those aren't through trucks. I mean, those trucks are going there for a purpose. And I can see how FedEx and UPS and some of those, they're just going on through. But construction trucks like cement truck, you got to let those guys through. You can't limit that kind of trucking, because they're providing us with the construction materials that Paul and a lot of us need in that area.
Councilman Clare.
I'm going to disagree with John for a change. I just think that if they've got an address to deliver to in the area, then certainly they're welcome to come in and do what they need to do and leave. But there are so many through trucks all day, all night of gravel, concrete, everything else. I mean, it is just unbelievable how many trucks go through on these streets every day. And I really think we do need to limit it unless there's an actual delivery address in that they have that is within our city limits.
Mayor? Is that going to change when Northern Parkway's finished, which is what, in the next year, I would think?
Northern Parkway is not going to get finished in a year, but you know, if it ever got taken all the way to 101, then it becomes what it becomes is an alternative that is very desirable. Whether the truckers will use it, who knows? That's part of the problem. And what we want to do is encourage them to use Northern or to use Dunlap because it's there and there's they're major thoroughfares. They're just north here that they can use and not disrupt anyone's lives. And even if they're hauling cement, if the cement's not going to be used within the city, I don't have any problem having them haul that cement down Northern Parkway.
Yeah, because I can't imagine they would prefer lights to freeway. But
well, it's a shorter distance, so they don't want to go the extra distance. And I understand time is money, but there is also the disruption of life within the neighborhoods.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Brainerd Watson.
I'd like to just chime in too as well and say that, our residents who back up to Camelback Road and on both sides of Litchfield bypass have taken a hit in terms of being impacted by traffic. I mean, we lived on the corner and had to demolish the house and move into the park because the traffic made it totally impossible to exist where we were. And I know that likewise, people who back right up to Camelback Road adjacent to Fry's have commented about the lights, have commented about the traffic at all noise at all hours. I lived on Sierra Hermosa and we heard big trucks rumble through all the time. And I just think that it is financially going to be a hit. I agree with what the vice mayor is saying, and that's certainly a consideration. But I feel like we owe that the intrinsic value of what we can do to protect the community through the traffic traveling around us is important. It may not be something you can actually put a dollar figure on, but being able to control whether or not we have lighting, whether or not we have street lights, whether or not we have, traffic lights, just so much of that I think is going to make it possible for us to help keep the lifestyle that people in the park want. And so I would support this.
And another feature of this is the controlling the landscaping from Dysart going west. We hope that the Historic Society and their museum is going to be a big attraction, and we're going to end up with a lot of people who are going to be coming from the east side into Litchfield Park to see the things that are at that museum. We're also hopeful that Sun Health will be successful in their venture on the corner with the organic farming and the farm to table agritourism project that they're going to put on the corner. So as we bring people into our community, I don't particularly feel like I want them traveling on Camelback Road the way it is today. I mean, there needs to be, the medians need to be improved. We need to get water out there so we can put in some landscaping. That whole drive from Dysart, going west, I think would be a lot more appealing, and it would present our community a lot better, if we had control of the road and we actually would invest in those medians and invest in the landscape to make it look a lot nicer. So I think that's another factor that you should consider.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Stossy.
I'm not necessarily opposed to the city taking on Camelback Road. I just wanted to express something that frustrates me a little bit in our conversation. I think as a council, we pay a lot more attention to the neighborhoods that back up on a Camelback than we do to the neighborhoods that back up on a Dysart. Because I've never heard I hear us saying we want truck traffic to go down Dysart, but we don't ever say we worry about the neighborhoods that back up to Dysart because they're going to get truck noise. So I just want to express that little frustration.
And one of the things that was in the presentation earlier this evening was a significant allocation of money for the design work to replace the wall along Dysart, because that's the last significant stretch of wall that really is the old wall that needs to be changed. It needs to be, heightened, so that some of that noise will be mitigated if we get in, when we get in and redo that wall. So I don't think it's a matter of ignoring those communities. The problem we end up with is that we have prohibited trucks already on Litchfield Road. We're not enforcing it maybe as strongly as we could, but through commercial trucks are not allowed on Litchfield Road. So if we do that, it's difficult to then also prohibit them on Dysart, because there are no more alternatives. As you go, Dysart is the last one to the east. After that, you got El Mirage. I suppose in the future, we could push them over to El Mirage, and maybe that will be possible at some point. But today, El Mirage really is not in a shape where it could take the traffic that's on Dysart. So I don't want to give the impression I'm not concerned about those residents, because I am. I think we need to do what we can. We need to take all the reasonable steps to try to minimize the noise pollution and that impact the entire community, because it's tremendously more noisy here today than it was when I first moved here. All you have to do is, anybody in the park can literally go out in their backyard, go out when it's quiet, go out, look at the stars, but you just sit for a little bit and get acclimated to being outside, and you will be astonished at how much noise there is in background, just din. And it does decrease the pleasure of being here, particularly in the evenings when you're out and trying to enjoy the outside.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you just made a great argument for why we have to let truck traffic go on Dysart. But it's interesting because you could make the same exact argument for why we should allow truck traffic on Camelback. Because
we got
there's McDowell, Thomas doesn't go through. Truck traffic's not allowed on Indian School. If we don't allow it on Camelback, you can't go through on Bethany or Glendale. So now you're all the way up to Northern Parkway. So it's the exact same argument.
It actually is allowed on Indian School after you get to the east of Litchfield Road. So if a trucker needs to go across, they can easily come across Litchfield Road, go north, take a right, and be on Indian School, and you see trucks. So it's a thoroughfare on Indian School trucks. So is there any further discussion about the annexation of Camelback Road?
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I got a couple of questions. Tom, I think you said that this resolution does nothing more than authorize you to go back and negotiate with the county more. But as I read the item, it says we're adopting a resolution for approving an IGA with the county to annex Camelback Road. What did I miss something in that somehow?
Well, I can tell you the discussions that I had with staff, and maybe staff can answer that question more clearly. The negotiations with the county are not completed. We know what the county wants in terms of us going out to El Mirage Road, and we know that the county wants to give us $3.5 million, but that number and that particular ending is not set in stone as far as I understood it. What we were trying to do is get to the point where we had the council committed to doing an annexation that would be as far as El Mirage Road at a sum that was not less than 3.5 million, so that then we could complete these negotiations and then get this before the county board of supervisors in a reasonable period of time.
Okay, my next question is, okay, so I totally agree, Litchfield Road to the Goodyear city limits. We need that. You've got me convinced that we need at least our half of Litchfield Road to Dysart, and maybe we need both sides of it. why do we need from Dysart to El Mirage? Is that a mile or 2 miles from Dysart to El Mirage?
It's 1 mile. It's 1 mile. And I you know,
Okay.
I'm not excited about that taking that section in. We actually do need it if we're going to get serious about posting for trucks, because we need to post before they get to Dysart Road. And the county will not allow us to post. We actually put some signs up, I think, and the county took them down. So we've been down this road with the county on posting no trucks, and they will not. Their McDOT will not approve it. They will not allow it. So if we don't take that, then we're going to be limited to posting to the west of Dysart, and that will mean can't be really effective until you get to Litchfield. So you've really lost, you've lost a lot of the effectiveness of this.
Can we get permission of a landowner on the corner of Camelback and Dysart, maybe 300 feet east of Dysart, to put the sign up right on the very, very, very edge of their property?
I don't have any idea. Certainly that I'm sure that's not been requested. Councilman Donahue.
So my question is enforcement. I mean, the sheriff, I guess it's the sheriff that would be stopping the trucks. I mean, that's just not happening. And I can't.
Well, once it's in the city, then it will be our city police department.
Right, inside the city, I get, but I mean, the Camelback, I mean, they're not gonna stop them. The sheriff are not gonna stop those trucks. That'd be crazy. So
The enforcement would start at El Mirage Road and go all the way down Camelback to the Goodyear city limits.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I just can't imagine they're gonna do that. That's the bummer about all this, is whatever we annex or whatever.
Once it's in our city, it's our enforcement. It's not the county's. The county wouldn't be enforcing it.
Well, and so in that case, is our Avondale police, I mean, are we gonna give them a quota, or, again, I just can't see them stopping truckers. I don't know. There's other things that they have to do.
I actually spoke with Avondale PD about this before. That was one of the big reasons Avondale PD was brought on, just to be honest, because if you remember, we had issues with our former police services enforcing our truck restriction.
Right.
And we talked that with Avondale PD up front. This is something we expect to see. That's part of the contract. And as the mayor said, Camelback is right now a city road, so Avondale PD can enforce it. Truck restriction is not banned today on Camelback. It's still a county road. However, once we take Camelback from county, assuming we do, then of course we would send letters up to truck companies, let them know starting on X date we're going to do this, and then Avondale PD would enforce it.
Well, we have to, because if you don't do it, it doesn't. The whole thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
But Avondale PD would enforce it. They know that that's part of the reason they were brought on, was to stop the trucks that were breaking the law in Litchfield Park.
Yeah.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman.
haven't we seen an uptick in their enforcement on Litchfield Road?
Yeah, yes, they had over 200 traffic stops last month.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a huge improvement in that way.
Well, yeah, MCSO was having five or six stops. I mean, so yeah, it's a huge improvement. Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Oh, I didn't say anything, but I'm still struggling with east of Dysart Road. I'm trying. There's got to be a way to make that work. I mean, that allows these truckers to come down off the Northern Parkway or someplace up there. They come south on Dysart. They would have the ability to turn east on Camelback and proceed to wherever they want to go. It gives them an alternate route. I struggle with why we care if they drive east of Dysart, and I struggle with why we want to take east of Dysart.
I don't care about the trucks east of Dysart. I just want to be able to post along Dysart so we keep them from going west of Dysart.
if we voted as a council to give you authority, you're still in the negotiation stages, it sounds like. If we voted as a council to give you authority to go back to the county and say, you can't get your council to agree to take east of Dysart, but we can get them to agree to take from Goodyear all the way to Dysart. County, I'm stuck with this. You need to get this done. Does that give you the bargaining power to maybe get a better deal out of these guys?
We can try. I mean, Matthew has been going back and forth. I have actually, at least I've had some conversations with our supervisor. Those conversations are not completed yet, but I've had some conversations with the supervisor to see if they're, what we could do to, to sweeten the pot, if you would. And those are ongoing. My own thought is that if the council wants us to continue negotiating, I would rather just table this IGA, and we'll go back and say to the council that we'll go back to the county and say the council's not happy with this 3.5 million if it's going to go all the way to El Mirage. They're happy if it only goes to Dysart, but they're not happy if it has to go all the way to El Mirage. The problem, we're still going to end up with a problem if we do that, and if we don't go to El Mirage, I think we're going to have a problem with trying to enforce our no truck ordinance. But we can certainly see if there's some way we can get around it.
So maybe then we take it to the edge of the property that's in Litchfield Park, where the emergency center is in the southeast corner. We take it to the city limit right there and stop the annexation there. Does that give you what you need?
I would think
and that keeps us away from 3/4 of a mile road.
Yeah, I think that would give us enough room to do the posting. What I would say is that if you wanted to make it a shorter distance, you would go to just west of where that traffic light is. It's about 127th Avenue. That would be kind of the natural place to stop it. Would be just before that intersection.
Isn't that just a few hundred yards from El Mirage?
Yeah, it's not very. No. It's a half mile from El Mirage.
I think Mayor Schoaf, I think Vice Mayor is referring to the commercial property, if I'm correct, on Dysart and Camelback, not El Mirage and Camelback.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the natural place, if you're going to go along that road, the natural place where you would stop is at the traffic signal that was just put in, which is about 127th Avenue. So it's probably, I'm going to guess that our city line is about 1/4 mile to the east of Dysart, and then it's another 1/4 mile approximately to the 127th Avenue, which is where that traffic light is. I don't know what the name of the street is there. It may be 127th or maybe some name, but it's probably
that traffic. I haven't driven it in a while, but the traffic light you're referring to, I think, is if you're going eastbound, you turn left and you go back to that vet office and to the west side of those tiny homes.
Yeah, I thought there was a traffic light that was at 127th Avenue, which is right now you can only turn going to the south. So maybe that I'm wrong. Maybe there isn't a traffic light there. I thought they had installed one there.
There is at 127th, sir.
There is not one?
There is.
There is one. Yeah, I thought there was. But anyway, I would say that if you want to go something short of El Mirage, that you would go to 127th Avenue. Then you have plenty of room to post it for these trucks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, if we, I don't want to hamstring you and the staff. If we basically say we don't like the deal, does it give you more bargaining power to go back to them and try and get a better deal? Because as I read this, if they see that we've approved this, there's no negotiating. We've already agreed to take it all the way to El Mirage and take $3.5 million.
Yeah, again, what I would say is that I would rather just table the IGA as it is, and we can go back and tell the county that we've met resistance at the council and see what we can, what we can get.
Okay. That'd be my druthers, but I mean, it's up to the rest of the council.
Do you need a motion, Mayor?
Yes, and we're going to need a motion to figure out what you guys want to do. Absolutely.
May I make the motion?
Sure.
I would make the motion that we go ahead and table this item and ask you guys to go back and do a little more negotiating with them, indicating some of our concerns.
Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Any further
I
discussion?
have a question.
Yeah.
question. How long have we been negotiating this?
Well, we've been overall, I'm going to tell you, we've been negotiating it, multiple years, a long time. It has gotten, I don't know. It's been a long time.
For this year, we've been doing it, what do you think, Woody, since June?
Yeah, we've been doing it in this current batch. I think it's been a relatively active negotiation for about a year.
Can I make a suggestion on this?
Yes, please.
I kind of like the 127th compromise. What if council did a motion that we would approve the payment of not less than 3.5, but we would take it from Goodyear border to 127th? That would be our amendment to this IGA and see if they bite. Because I think that's the point, is that we don't want to go out all the way to El Mirage Road. So maybe you just take it again from Goodyear border to 127th with the amount they've said, not less than 3.5.
Matt, if we do that, does that limit your ability to get more than 3.5?
No, sir, I don't think so, because we've put it in the resolution in the CC, the word's not less than. I'm going to be honest, I don't know county's ever going to give us more money than that. We've been trying to get more money out of them, and so far they've just said 3.5, that's it. But we can certainly keep trying. But I mean, they may negotiate on going from El Mirage to 127th. Either way, they're still giving up asphalt they have to maintain. So we could come back and say, council doesn't want to go to El Mirage Road, but instead they'll go to 127th. We could try that.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the most likely compromise, is to go to 127th Avenue and keep the same amount of money.
Right.
And I don't, there's some source for this particular amount. I mean, it's not like they've been negotiating with 3.5 million. They're negotiating with $3,511,432.85. I mean, it's been generated from something, from somewhere. So we don't know what the significance of that number is. So, but they've been very reluctant to change it.
I think originally they were offering to give us 2.2. I could be wrong, but I think they were talking 2.2 back in the early summer. And then we got back to 3.5. I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth on this deal.
It was about $2 million, but that was before it went all the way to El Mirage Road.
That's correct.
Mayor, I'd be happy to amend my motion to 127th Avenue.
And not less than 3.51, whatever the number is.
Right.
All right. Will you accept that? Do you accept it on the second?
Yes.
Yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as amended to authorize completing negotiations on an IGA to annex Camelback from the Goodyear city line to approximately 127th Avenue in exchange for the compensation provided in your council packet, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right. Next item is Wigwam Creek South Annexation IGA. Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, you may remember, well, some of you will have been on council for a while. This was originally a deal that was made in 2012 between the city of Avondale and the city of Litchfield Park. There was a lot of pieces in that agreement. The big pieces of that one was, one, that the city would keep, Albertsons would stay in the city, that the property at the corner of Dicer and Camelback would stay in the city, but Monument Point would go to Avondale. You have to understand, at that time, Monument Point wasn't being built. and the developer wanted to build it as residential. We don't want to see a large increase of residential in Litchfield Park because it doesn't help us any. So the developer wanted to transfer it to Avondale because Avondale would go for residential. Okay. Also, Avondale would have paid to Litchfield Park a portion of the construction tax that they earned as Wigwam Creek South got built out, because at that time Wigwam Creek South wasn't done. So of course that never happened. Avondale went for a vote and it didn't come through there. It requires 51% and that didn't happen. So here we are today. Earlier this year, Avondale came back with us on this deal. They'd like to update it. And we went back and forth on this. And we worked it out with Avondale with several changes. One, Avondale will no longer pay us construction tax for Wigwam Creek South because Wigwam Creek South, of course, is finished. There's nothing left to build there. It's built out. We would now keep Monument Point. Monument Point is now a commercial property. We're certainly not going to give up sales tax revenues from those properties. Monument Point would stay in the city of Litchfield Park. But also, Avondale wants to keep the post office properties. In the 2012 deal, we would have got the post office and the 25 acres around it would have came into Litchfield Park. That was the exchange for Monument Point. But now Avondale feels that since we're keeping Monument Point, they want to keep the post office. All right. And it also needs to be understood that Avondale has approved a new storage facility that's going to be built between the post office and Indian School Road. So of course there's sales tax dollars to be gained there. So again, those will be the big changes in the amendment that you see. Avondale would keep the post office property. We would keep Monument Point. Avondale would no longer pay us construction tax. Pretty simple. We've been negotiating back and forth with Avondale on this deal. What the city really has to do to make this possible is we have to move our annexation lines to allow Avondale to take Wigwam Creek South. Wigwam Creek South is currently in the county, but we have a strip there that has to be moved for them to take it. This was similar to what was done when Litchfield Park took the Fry's property. Originally, the annexation line went in front of Fry's. So Glendale agreed to move that annexation line behind Fry's so that we could take the Fry's property into the city. It's similar to that. Avondale feels that they can get the 51%. That's something myself and the city manager of Avondale have discussed because there's a lot of work that goes into this kind of deal to make this happen. They feel they can get 51% of the homeowners in Wigwam Creek South to go for this deal for several reasons. One, they would get Avondale PD service. And we know what a great job Avondale PD does. And also they would get Avondale Fire. So they would stop paying rural Metro Fire for Wigwam Creek South. So that's a savings for all those residents. Anyway, that's an issue for Avondale to deal with. Avondale has also agreed as part of this deal to pay for, and the Vice Mayor touched on this on the last item, Avondale has agreed to pay for the maintenance of half of the maintenance of 2 lanes of Camelback from Dysart to El Mirage. And that'd be about $112,000. Obviously, if the annexation doesn't happen, if they don't get the 51%, they wouldn't pay that. So that's the gist of this deal. I think it's a good deal for us. It really doesn't cost us anything other than to move our annexation lines. It helps Avondale. And of course, we get some funding toward the eventual mill and overlay of that section. As Woody said, that doesn't need to be repaved right now, and that's only for the section from Dysart to El Mirage. So,
and I don't know if Matthew made this clear or not, but the impetus to look at this again is coming from a request from the city of Avondale.
That's right.
So they have had contact with the residents in the Wigwam Creek South development and believe that enough of them support this now that it will work. So the only reason we're going down this path is because of that. It is something that those residents have been wanting to come into Litchfield Park forever. And it just doesn't make sense for Litchfield to expand its boundaries to take them in, because the cost to service those residents is far in excess of the limited amount that we would receive from state shared revenue to pay for those services. So it does make sense for Avondale because Avondale has a property tax in addition to state shared revenue, so they can benefit from a couple of income streams which will pay the cost of servicing those residents. So are there questions or comments from council? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, the difference between this agreement and the old agreement is all the other terms of the old agreement go by the wayside except Avondale takes over Wigwam Creek South. And I'm in favor of that. Matthew, you made a comment that Avondale was going to agree to pay for 2 lanes of Camelback Road. And as I read the documents, I thought they said they would pay for 1 lane because they thought the other lane, because that's all their subdivision needed. And the second lane was really of regional significance.
So
I thought there was just a dollar amount. Is there something, did I miss that? There was just a dollar amount.
They agreed to pay for half of the mill and overlay of 2 lanes, because 1 lane west, 1 lane east, and the other 2 lanes are considered regional lanes. So the half of the mill and overlay cost of those 2 lanes was estimated at the $112,500.
Okay. That's just a one-shot deal. There's nothing in the future for maintenance.
That's right, sir. It was just for mill and overlay. The city manager, myself, and Avondale, we have discussed future needs there as lights go in, as things change. And me and him have actually been talking as we speak about if this deal changes now, then just going to 127th.
And if we can get just to 127th, this pavement deal goes away, this sharing the cost.
I don't think it goes away entirely, sir. I think we just change it.
Okay. I'm in favor. I mean, if they can really get the signatures this time. I mean, the HOA came to us the last time and made all the presentations and told us they had the signatures. And we went through a massive amount of work with staff, attorneys, both sides, everything, lots of council hours, worked out this deal, figured out the surveys, the boundaries, all this kind of stuff. And we passed the IGAs with Avondale, and then Wigwam Creek could not get the signatures that they told us they could get. So I don't want to spend a lot of city time and money on this, on the possibility they can get the signatures, but I've got no problems with this resolution, you know, and we just say, if it's yours, do what you can.
It is a good public policy decision. So
yes.
Any other comments from the council? If not, is there a motion to approve the amendment of the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement for annexation of Wigwam Creek South?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and that was by
Claire.
Okay, Councilman Claire. I saw your hand up, but your hand was kind of covering your mouth, and so wasn't sure if you were saying second or not. Are there any further discussion or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to amend the intergovernmental agreement signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item is a consideration of the settlement agreement for the national opioid litigation.
Yes, Mayor and Council. One, I apologize for my voice. I had my throat operated on yesterday. My wife is happy because I can't talk very loud, but as council may recall, the city entered into an MOU with the state for this very same issue last year to set up the percentage of distribution of whatever the opioid settlement agreements were going to come out to. And that allowed and that was a non-binding MOU. And that allowed the state to go and to negotiate for a share of the opioid settlements that we're anticipating to come out within the next few months. What this agreement does is it takes that MOU and it makes it into a binding agreement where the state, the counties, and all the municipalities agree to that percentage that was established last year. And this is one of three things that will have to be approved in order to get any funding from the opioid settlement. First, we have to approve this. And then once the settlements are ready for approval, then the city has to approve those settlements. If the city doesn't approve all 3 of those items, then the city doesn't get any funds from those settlements.
Motion to approve.
Looks like it's been seconded by Councilman Clare. I just have a quick question for the city attorney. The use of these funds is restricted, I think, pretty significantly. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're restricted to items that address opioid substance abuse. So it can either be used for the purchase of Narcan, it can be used for educational purposes. There'll be a more detailed list of what the funds can actually be used for, but they are restricted funds. And I would point out that these settlement agreements that are anticipated are going to be paid out over a number of years. So we're not probably going to see the majority of this money all at one time, but over a period of time. But we'll know more when we get the final settlement approved, final settlements from the two litigation cases.
Mayor?
Okay. Is there a question?
Yes, Mayor. I sent an email to you and to Matthew, just suggesting to look into whether we can take some of this money and make it part of our donation process to some of these nonprofits that may do drug abuse counseling and assistance.
That's a good idea, Mr. Vice Mayor. My concern is I don't want to take the money and then not be able to use it. That's my major concern.
Yes.
So,
I don't want to put drop boxes for prescription drugs around the city.
No,
CVS and Walgreens already do that.
Yeah,
Our nonprofits may be able to.
if we could give it to some of the nonprofits that deal with this on a regular basis, I think that'd be, that would be wonderful, or something similar. But so that's the main thing we're going to need the city attorney to make sure that you become an expert in is how can we use this money in a way that actually will benefit something more than a drop box for prescriptions. Councilman Donahue.
Well, one of my questions is, could Avondale Police could it be used for them to purchase Narcan? And have
I think that one, but I don't know how much money it is, but it may be that maybe it'll all get used for that, but I'm going to suspect not. But
I'm sorry, sir. I actually asked that question already. That was one of the first thoughts we had, was supplying Narcan to Avondale PD or Goodyear Fire. And it's my understanding that both agencies already received Narcan through some state funding. So they already have it. I love the idea of getting to a nonprofit. If we can do that, I think that's a great way to do that.
Yeah, we just need to make sure we find a creative way to use this money so it actually helps somebody as opposed to just doing something that that checks a box.
And Mayor, Council, just glancing through some of the additional information that I got, it does say that engage nonprofits, faith-based communities, and community coalitions to support people in treatment and recovery, and to support family members in their efforts to manage their opioid users in the family.
All right, good. So we have some flexibility.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any further discussion on the motion to approve the One Arizona Distribution of Opioid Settlement Funds Agreement? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item is the approval of a guaranteed maximum price, GMP, for number 3. Mr. Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you just stated, this is guaranteed maximum price number 3 for the Litchfield Square project infrastructure construction. GMP 3 will install all of the street improvements for Litchfield Road, including the roundabout and the extension of Village Parkway into Litchfield Square to the Desert Avenue alignment. It involves all of the pavement, landscaping, street lighting, hardscape, and so on. So this is basically the completion of Litchfield Road construction and extension of Village Parkway to open up the project. I want to clarify one sentence that I had in there in paragraph 3, where it talks about the extension of Loma Avenue north of Village Parkway. The purpose of that is to allow for driveways for parking and future parking garages behind parcel 2 or behind the buildings on parcel 2, and also for parking and a future parking garage for parcel 1 This does not extend a street to Fairway Drive. So I apologize for that misconception there. What this does do, however, is it provides a connection for pedestrians, bicyclists, and cart path, golf cart drivers to get into the north end of Litchfield Square by driving their cart, bike, or just by walking either through the cart path underpass or from the Fairway Drive, La Loma area. It does not make a street connection, so there will be no traffic going north of the canal.
Mr. Scott, there's a cart path that goes from the underpass, the cart underpass. There's a cart path that goes from the exit of the underpass over to the corner of Fairway and whatever. I'm not sure what the other street is.
La Loma.
La Loma. So it goes into that. It goes into where La Loma and Fairway, come to a 90-degree intersection. So is there going to be some connection between that cart path and the city square? Because I don't see that on any of the plans.
Yes, sir. There will be a connection. We call it the North Head connection. So in fact, if you want to look at page 321 of your packet, it's highlighted in yellow. So what we're going to do there is we're going to put in two cart paths that basically form a triangle with the existing cart path. So one of the cart paths it's basically to help people who are coming under Litchfield Road. As soon as they get across the canal, they can take a new cart path along the canal to the old La Loma Bridge that crosses the canal and then come into the Litchfield Square that way. Or if you're coming from the La Loma area or Fairway Drive, you can take another new cart path directly south from that existing cart path to that same bridge and enter into Litchfield Square that way.
Yeah, I don't see those cart paths on this drawing. I can see your yellow lines and I see the canal and I can see the cart path, but I don't see any cart path that is extending. It's extending.
Yeah, you're right. It's not on this map because it's just too large of a scale. But if you want to give me a couple minutes, I can probably call up.
No, the connection is not something that I ever recall having been discussed at any review that was done, like, say the city managers, the city manager working group that has gone through this GMPs and, with in some detail. I don't remember ever discussing a cart path connecting up with that cart path.
Okay, well, I apologize then, because I thought we had taken it through the working group, but the idea there is that we needed to provide some way for, on a solid surface, a concrete surface, we need to provide some way for pedestrians who are coming under the Litchfield Road cart path to get into the north end. In other words, a pedestrian connection so that people can walk from the residential areas to the north or west of Litchfield Road. They can walk, ride their bike, ride their golf cart to
I don't have a concern about the idea. I have a concern that we need to have enough work done on it before we go off doing it, because I don't know. Do you know who actually paved that? The last pavement that was done on that cart path? You know who did it?
No.
Okay, it was done by JDM and the golf course. So they actually feel like they have some right to that cart path. And before we start hooking it into our pathway system, we need to make sure that we get all that stuff cleaned up so we know what we're doing, mean, I was not happy that they even went in and did what they did and put in asphalt. Our cart paths are made out of concrete. And so when they put that asphalt in there, I was not happy. But it signifies from their standpoint that they think they own a lot of that. So we need to get all that stuff cleaned up so that we're all on the same page about that cart path before we start tying it into a pathway system for Litchfield Square.
Well, Mayor, I'm happy to present it to the next working group meeting.
All right, you should present it, and then we need to work with JDM to see, so the jurisdiction of that cart path is clean between the two of us. I'm not sure how much of the cart path they understand that they think they own when we come out of that tunnel going westbound.
Mayor, I can clarify that for you. The city owns the property east of Litchfield Road, and an easement was provided to Wigwam or whatever the entity was that owned the golf course. An easement was provided for them to cross that property to get to the west side of Litchfield Road. The same thing on the other side, except the other way. JDM owns the property on the west side of Litchfield Road, and the city was granted an easement to cross that property to use the cart path. All this happened back when Cache was being negotiated.
So we need to add an item to our list with Mel Schultz to make sure that they understand and everybody understands who has control of these pathways, because they're not maintaining really the pathway that's west of that underpass. They don't maintain it at all. It's got potholes. It's in terrible condition, but they are maintaining the one to the east of the underpass. When they obviously, because they put the asphalt down because it was in bad shape. So we're going to have to put that on our list of things with JDM to make sure that we know who's doing what to whom. And if we're going to tie it in, particularly if we're going to be tying it into a pathway system in Litchfield, then it should be a pathway that's consistent with how we build pathways, which is concrete, not asphalt.
Understand.
All right.
Anyway, I think that's all I had to present, Mayor.
Any other questions for staff on the GMP3? Okay, is there a motion to approve the guaranteed maximum price proposal number 3 as presented by Aiken Gardner in the amount of $7,484,278.41? Moved by Councilman. I heard somebody say.
Vice Mayor Faith.
Oh, Vice Mayor Faith. Thank you. So moved by Vice Mayor Faith. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Clare. Any further discussion?
Just a quick reminder to Woody, that concrete sidewalk's supposed to be pink in our code.
Yep, thank you. We have it on the plans.
All right, good.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, GMP 3 is approved.
Thank you.
We're going to see a roundabout going up here shortly.
That's right.
Next item, Litchfield Square hardscape monument sign and lighting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Let me get to that item here. So we have, just like all the other infrastructure on the project, we have been working to come up with designs for several of the key features in Litchfield Square. And what we're presenting tonight is some resolution on lighting, hardscape for the streets, and the restroom design. So we have been through 4 or 5 sessions, working group sessions, as well as with the marketing committee. And we went through a joint work session of DRB and RPG back in September. And then finally a regular session with DRB on September 23rd. During that whole process, we presented several different types of lighting for the park, and we also presented examples of hardscape materials like concrete and pavers, pedestrian pavers, vehicle pavers, and so on for the streets in Litchfield Square, and then of course the restroom design as well. So through all of that process, we have come down to, or DRB has recommended to City Council approval of these three items. Let me run through them real quick. So on the hardscape, which is on page 411 of your packet, we have the paved, asphalt paved street, of course. We also have colored concrete behind the curb, and that colored concrete, which will be of a kind of an autumn yellow color. And then that concrete has, and they'll have a pattern cut into it. And that concrete will have two textures. One is more of like a sandblast texture, so that it will have a little bit different look to it, but also a little bit of different texture. And then adjoining, behind the parking areas and adjoining the buildings, we have pedestrian pavers. And those pavers are intended to create some, special interest, some special architectural and aesthetic design for the sidewalks, rather than just have them be plain concrete. All of these, and then on the crosswalks, we also have asphalt, vehicle pavers for the crosswalks, which are in kind of a brownish color in a herringbone pattern. And you can see all that on page 411. So the only concern that DRB had with this concept was with the pedestrian pavers. They were concerned about colors and blending of colors and contrast between the colors. So the way we resolved that was to have the contractor, Aiken Gardner, prepare 3 mock-ups of 3 different types of pavers based on what we think that they're looking for, different color combinations, different contrasts, some darker, some lighter, and have actual mock-ups built next to some concrete that, the other concrete, the colored concrete that would be the sidewalk, so that they can actually see how the pavers would look, not only by themselves, but also adjacent to the rest of the sidewalk colored concrete area. So that's how we resolve that with DRB. The monument sign.
That's something for the future.
I'm sorry?
That's something for the future?
Well, when we get to, actually it's going to come up here, GMP3 will build Village Parkway. So we're going to resolve it here when Aiken Gardner starts to work on a Village Parkway, which will probably be next spring.
So they'll do these mock-ups, and DRB can look at them and council can look at them.
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct. Yep. And then we also settled on a monument sign design, which is page 412. Again, we went through several different designs of signs, and this seemed to be the one that was most popular with all of the groups, actually, RPG and marketing and so on, DRB. So we're going to tweak this a little bit in that we will lower the height of the Litchfield Square white area to reduce a little bit of that excess white area that's below the name, but otherwise it's going to look pretty much like this. Obviously put some landscaping in front of it, and it will be lighted, so it'll make a nice sign. DRB approved that, recommended approval of that. And then the lighting is, they selected, and I forget the name of it, Lusso Array, which is a very contemporary light. That's on page 413 of your packet. Out of all the options that were presented to them, and I think we went through at least 6 options, this was the one that DRB settled on and is recommending that for approval. And you can see it photoshopped into a rendering of the restroom there, how that light will look physically with the restroom and the area there. And then, let's see, I think that's all. I think that's all we had to present, Mr. Mayor.
Questions or comments from council? And you're looking.
I have one comment.
Yes. Yes, Councilman Romack.
Thank you. I want to say that I think that they've done a really nice job. This is well thought out, well planned, and hopefully we're going to be able to execute it as well as they've planned it.
Yep. Thank you. I'll pass that on to him. Yeah, as you've heard me say before, I'm really excited about this because this gives us an opportunity to do something a little different, a little unique, and a little more contemporary while still hearkening back to the historical architecture, of the city, and just modernizing it a little bit. So I'm really excited about it, and I think we'll all be pretty happy with the way it turns out.
Okay, any other discussion or comments from council? If not, Councilman Brainerd Watson.
I've heard a lot of people talk about the different light fixtures downtown in our restaurant district and how much they like them. And I just want to be prepared with the rationale behind not using the same type of lighting.
Yeah, we tried to present a range of options from very contemporary to more traditional, actually almost looking like a modern version of a coach lamp, if you will, or a gas lamp, and everything in between. So it is kind of interesting that one of the options that we had mimicked the streetlights in the downtown area, which are the transit style lights, which we're also going to use as the street light for Litchfield Square. But when they saw it next to the restroom building, they thought it was a little clunky, or I don't know, it was kind of overdone, I think, a little busy. So that's why I think they went with a more sleek design of the one that you see there.
So are we going to have both types in Litchfield Square?
We'll have 3 types.
The light that I'm showing you tonight, that light will be used just in the park.
Okay.
But my concern is that then you have the old lights, the ones that are getting, towards near the end of their usefulness, I think, but from probably the early 80s, 70s, 80s. And then the new ones that we put in, and then these. So we'll have 3 different styles. And I think, is there a 4th one over in the, I'm sorry, across the street? It's almost midnight here. Across the street over by, on the other side of Litchfield Road. Don't we have yet a 4th type of light?
Yes, we do have 4 types in the city. One type is the light that's on that lights arterial streets like Litchfield Road. They call it the shoebox, kind of a square box on the top of a very tall pole.
Right.
In the village area, we have what I call the acorn lights. They're shorter, much shorter, and they have that globe, acorn-shaped globe on the top. In the downtown area, we have the transit lights that I mentioned earlier, a transit style. Those are more like an upside-down pie pan, if you will. And then in the residential areas, we have a kind of a coach style light that sits on the top of a kind of a skinny pole. I don't know what those are called. I'm not sure. But anyway, yes, we have 4 different types, and now we're going to have 5.
Lisa, I was part of that committee that talked about some of this, and much of the conversation was picking lights that match the new construction that's coming in, even though it's not going to look new. But I don't think it's going to be that different that you're going to notice that there's 4 different types of lights. You know, I think they spent a lot of time talking about this, and I was just representing the marketing group, and so I wasn't even making the decision. But I think they spent a lot of time, and I don't really think you're going to think, oh my goodness, Litchfield has 4 different types of lights. The lights sort of match the construction and are pretty subtle. It was the actual light, as in the amount of light it puts out, that they were also talking about.
And if I can comment, I was on design and review as we went through this, and it was fairly, this one was these lights were like the best. We don't have to be matchy-matchy. And one thing we found out is the lights kind of hide in the background and really are not part of, they're not part of the forefront of the thought of what you see. So the design and review board really like these lights over the other ones.
And I think they're lovely. I don't have a problem with the light themselves. I just think we should be aware that there's a perception out there that there are very different lights in very different areas of the town. And, I've heard it talked about, and people are not always happy with that.
And this is a very different project with a lot of new things, and it's going to really stand out, and it's going to fit perfectly.
I just think we need to have our answers ready to go, why we chose a 5th one. And so I appreciate the feedback you guys have given, and so we can defend it.
I think you should give them all the reasons you can remember from tonight and then refer them to Councilman Clare.
I love that.
I'm good with that. Send them my way.
Any further discussion on the hardscapes, the signage, or the lighting as presented by Woody Scouten? If not, is there a motion to approve? Looks like a motion by Councilman Clare, a second by?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Lisa Brainerd Watson. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is adoption of the ordinance 21-251 on the Court Enhancement Fund. Mr. Williams.
Mayor and council, last but not least is the second reading of the Court Enhancement Ordinance. You may remember from the reading last month, this basically changes the way that staff can use the Court Enhancement Fund. The way it was written, it was very restrictive in things that can be used for. And this would make it so that we can use it for more general court expenses, such as court staff, salary, benefits, etc. Currently, there's $198,000 on hand in this account. With this change, we would begin spending those funds again only on court expenses, but we would spend it down to a minimum cap of $50,000. We'd probably break that down over several years. But the idea here again is just to spend some of these funds to loosen up, we can spend it more on other court expenditures. In the past, it's only been used for things like bulletproof glass. So there's been very few expenditures to this account. And we want to free this up and have it pay for other court expenses. But again, it would only be for court expenditures, not public works or anything else. But I think it's a good ordinance, and certainly welcome any questions if there are any.
Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt ordinance 21-251? Moved by Councilman Clare. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Olsey. Any further discussion? All those in favor of ordinance 21-251, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it is adopted.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
That completes our business for this evening. I don't believe we have a reason for an executive session. correct? No, sir. Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, is there anyone who is willing to second that motion? Councilman Wisconsin, Councilman Clare, Vice Mayor, we got everybody seconding it.
Oh, yeah. I'll stop third, fourth, and fifth.
All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, good evening. Thank you for your attention. It's been a long, long night, 3.5 hours. I appreciate the effort you put in tonight. We got a lot accomplished. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Night.
Good night.
Have a good